Chapter 32-43. A line of blood streaked across the army formed by over 300 heavenly mandate envoys, also taking away the lives of close to 30 boundless realm powerhouses. Their bodies and primordial spirits were crushed and dispersed into ashes. That attack was too terrifying. It was deathly silent outside the capital. Lin Sun's figure was like sword chi, invincible and unstoppable. When his figure stabilized, the enemy army was already in chaos. Everyone was dumbfounded, trembling all over, unable to recover from the bloody scene of death for a long time. One attack defeated the group of enemies and carved out a bloody path. Those who fell were all powerhouses who had stepped into the boundless realm. Each of their cultivation was unparalleled, but under Lin Sun's hands, they were as weak as paper. Who dared to believe this? Before this, everyone was still wondering how Lin Sun was going to escape this monstrous killing calamity, and in the end, such a scene played out. One could imagine how great the shock caused was. In the tea house of the capital, Xing Jian Gorge and Fu Nanli were both stunned. They suddenly realized that the cultivation that Lin Sun possessed now was far more powerful and terrifying than when they first saw him. Facing a group of the same realm, he had the grace of sweeping through invincible. The two of them did not know that back then in the Sea of Destiny, Lin Sun had already proven his way to the middle stage of the boundless realm. He had realized 10,000 Tao as one, 10,000 Dharma as one, and all things as one. His cultivation had long undergone earth-shattering changes. Right now, he looked like he was barehanded, but his body had already integrated the power of the 5 great Taoist bodies, and he had also completely integrated the power of the abyssal sword cauldron into his body. Therefore, the power of each move was far from what ordinary people of the same realm could withstand. Under the sky, the atmosphere was so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. The expressions of those heavenly mandate envoys all changed, their hearts in turmoil, completely shocked by this attack. Before coming, they had already learned that Lin Sun had killed over 10 heavenly mandate envoys in the land of the Qin Kingdom's capital. This created a great pressure on them. They had originally thought that with over 300 people joining forces, it would be enough to compete with Lin Sun. But looking at it now or in the end, they had still underestimated Lin Sun's terror. Such an opponent was no longer someone who could be resisted with strength in numbers. At the same time, Lin Sun looked back at those opponents and said, "Do you still want to continue?" His words caused the hearts of the enemies to tremble. They looked at each other in dismay, but no one said anything. Seeing this, Lin Sun said casually, "If anyone is still here after 3 breaths, he will be my enemy." Crash! As soon as he finished speaking, his opponents scattered like birds and beasts, each of them fleeing faster than anyone else. In less than 3 breaths of time, there wasn't a single opponent left. Lin Sun thought to himself that they were indeed a motley crew. With a single strike, he could destroy his opponent's fighting spirit and defeat him. Outside the imperial city, when they witnessed this scene, all the Almighties were shocked speechless. A sword swept across the sky, carving a bloody path and scaring away the enemies. Such elegance was simply like the ruler of this realm, and no one could rival him. "Everyone, it's not fun to watch. Let's all leave." Lin Sun's indifferent voice resounded outside the imperial capital. Very soon, the mighty figures who came from all directions left one after another with complicated emotions. It was also on this day that the news of Lin Sun repelling the enemy with a single strike spread. In an extremely short period of time, it shocked the entire mortal transformation, causing a huge uproar. Everyone knew that from this day onward, the entire mortal transformation realm would be doomed. No one would dare to be Lin Sun's enemy, let alone compete with him on the Great Way. In a tea house in the imperial capital, looking at Lin's relaxed manner, Xinjiang Gorge and Fu Nanli sighed with emotion in their hearts. Similarly boundless realm cultivation, but experiencing this battle made them deeply realize that they and Lin Sun were no longer people of the same world long ago. The difference was too great. After staying in the imperial capital for a few more days, Fu Nanli and Xinjiang Gorge left. This was the mortal transcendent realm, and they needed to make preparations for the great Tao struggle. Lin Sun and Xie Ji once again arrived at the hall in the depths of the palace. Remember, after we arrive at the Calamity Realm, you must wait for me at the Rebirth Pass. Lin Sun couldn't help but exhort again. Lin Sun, I'm not a child anymore. Summer Solstice complained, which was rare. Lin Sun smiled and teased. I forgot that your cultivation is not weaker than the Eternal Night Emperor at that time. Alright, I'll pay attention in the future and try to change. Xie Ji shook her head and grabbed Lin Sun's hand with her slender white hand. Her voice was melodious. There's no need to change. I like this feeling. Xie Ji's fingers were soft and cool. Lin Sun couldn't help but grab it tightly. Feeling the warmth of her palm, his voice also became gentle. When the matter in the ruins of wonderful Tao is settled, I'll bring you back to the ruins of fortune and marry you in a grand manner. That's what you said. A bright smile appeared on Xie Ji's beautiful face, and a pair of crescent-like clear eyes curved. She would never conceal the joy in her heart in front of Lin Sun. Lin Sun couldn't help but kiss her forehead lightly. Then, he took a deep breath and said, Go. Xie Ji grunted and turned to look at the jade seal. The jade seal was square and the size of a fist. It was heavy and towering, and it was engraved with mountains and rivers, the sun, moon, and stars. Its aura was extremely powerful. When Xie Ji's aura swept over, the jade seal suddenly glowed and a figure appeared. This person stood in the starry sky while stepping on the sun and moon. His body was covered with a layer of dark silver armor, and his face was handsome and cold. He held a golden halberd in his hand. Every breath he took caused the stars to tremble, and he was like a legendary supreme god of war. When this person appeared, Lin Sun's Tao Jade archive suddenly trembled, and the origin of this person appeared. Evolution Joha. He was known as the brilliant void god of war. 390,000 years ago, he attracted the fruit of chaos and stepped into the first gate of heaven. His Tao power was ranked 204th in the heavenly cycle rules. This was already an extremely shocking ranking. It should be known that since ancient times, only 1,614 people were able to include their Tao power in the heavenly cycle rules. Clang! As soon as Yen Zhouhe's figure appeared, he waved the golden halberd in his hand and slashed at Xie Ji. At that moment, it seemed as if a myriad of stars in the heavenly cycle were slashed down, and the scene was shocking and boundlessly terrifying. At this moment, although Yen Zhouhe was formed by Tao, it was already a kind of heavenly cycle rules, so its power was naturally extraordinary. Almost at the same time, Xie Ji also moved. In her slender white palm, the white bone spear pierced out, just like a mighty river of fate rushing out. The war broke out completely. Lin Sun stood in the distance and watched for a moment, and then relaxed. There was no doubt that Yen Zhouhe, who was known as the brilliant void god of war, was extremely powerful, and he was slightly better than the top figures such as Qi Qianji and Tian Xingzi. But compared with Xie Ji, it was not enough. Yen Zhouhe didn't lose in terms of cultivation, but in terms of the Great Way rules he mastered. After all, whether it was the power of fate, cause and effect, or time, they were too taboo and supreme, and the power they released was also beyond imagination. In less than a quarter of an hour, boom! The white bone spear in Xie Ji's hand suddenly slashed down from the sky, smashing Yen Zhouhe's Tao power, and a rain of light scattered like a waterfall. Then, under Lin Sun's shocked gaze, an obscure and indescribable power of rules emerged, and it bathed Xie Ji's graceful figure in it. It was dazzling and extremely gorgeous. This is the power of the chaotic Tao fruit. Lin Sun was shocked. The chaotic Tao fruit was a type of innate chaotic rule born in the ruins of Tao, and it was unimaginably powerful. According to legend, the more chaotic rule one mastered, the more transformation one could achieve in the boundless realm, and it was more likely for one to achieve true transcendence in the boundless realm. Now Lin Sun already knew that the boundless Taoist Lord and the boundless Dominator had practically refined numerous chaotic Tao fruits in the ruins of Tao, and that was why they possessed their current cultivation. Undoubtedly, the Tao karma that Xia Ji obtained by defeating Yen Zhouhe had drawn over a chaotic Tao fruit, and this was undoubtedly equivalent to obtaining a supreme fortune. Under Lin Sun's gaze, Xia Ji's aura was realizing a miraculous change, and it was rising rapidly like a stream after a rain. In just a few breaths of time, the power of the Great Way in her body was much stronger than before. Lin Sun couldn't help but be tempted by this. Buzz. Suddenly, a mysterious door appeared in the void, and it seemed to stand in the boundless and distant universe, giving off a feeling that it was unreachable. The gate of heaven had appeared. Then, Xia Ji's graceful figure suddenly turned into a beam of light and rushed into the gate of heaven. Everything happened too quickly, and Lin Sun didn't even have time to say a few words. On that day, in the sky above the Qing Kingdom's imperial capital, the heavenly cycle rule formed by the power of Yen Zhouhe's Tao karma disappeared, and a new rule power rose. This rule power was like a torrent of fate, and it surged through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Not long after it coiled in the sky above the imperial capital, it began to spread toward other places in the Qing Kingdom, as if it was attacking cities and pillaging strongholds. Such a scene shocked all the powerful beings scattered across the mortal transformation realm. In their respective Tao Karma Jade archives, a mysterious and powerful energy of the heavenly cycle was displayed. And in the palace hall deep in the Qing Kingdom's imperial palace, a Tao Karma Dharma appeared. It was a ball of light, and in the light and shadow was a boundless ocean of fate, majestic, obscure, and boundless. This was naturally the Tao karma power that Xia Ji had left behind. In the southwest region of the Qing Kingdom's imperial capital, a Taoist temple stood there, and incense was at its peak. In the past, there was a bustling crowd of good men and women who came to burn incense and worship, and it was very lively. At this moment, Lin Sun's figure appeared in front of this Taoist temple. His gaze was fixed on a copper furnace. This copper furnace was simple and powerful, and it stood on 3 legs. Torrential flames of the way burned inside, and mysterious flame totems appeared on the 4 walls of the furnace. This was also a Tao Karma Dharma, and it was left behind by a great power who had left the mortal transformation realm. It represented a power of the heavenly cycle rule. However, under Lin Sun's observation, he could clearly feel that the aura of this copper furnace was far less powerful than the aura of the jade seal that Yen Zhouhe had left behind. I wonder if defeating this Dharma will allow me to attract the fruit of the way of chaos. Lin Sun thought about it and finally decided to give it a try. Chapter 3244. The bronze cauldron rumbled and turned into a bearded man. He was thousands of feet tall, and his skin that seemed to be made of divine gold burned with violent and terrifying red divine flames. As soon as he appeared, he looked like a god that could incinerate the heavens. Hengqiu. He was known as the world-burning fire god. He left the mortal transformation 260,000 years ago and was ranked 519th in the heavenly cycle Tao law. Lin Sun's Tao Karma Jade archive reflected some information about him. As expected, this guy is far from being as powerful as Yen Zhouhe. However, he can be considered a mid-tier figure among the heavenly cycle Tao laws. Lin Sun thought. Go! The bearded man, Hengqiu, shouted and punched at Lin Sun. Feeling the power of the punch, Lin Sun could tell that Hengqiu's cultivation was only slightly stronger than Yellow Dragon Immortal. He was not as powerful as top figures like Qi Qianji and Tian Xingzi. If Lin Sun deduced further, he could tell that Qi Qianji and Tian Xingzi's Tao Karma should be ranked in the top 500. As Lin Sun pondered, he immediately stepped forward, and a circle of sword-shaped ripples emerged like dreamy moonlight. Boom! Hengqiu's fist, which seemed to be able to burn the heavens and the earth, was easily shattered, and turned into a colorful rain of light. Before Hing Qiu could change his move, the sword-shaped ripples spread and destroyed his thousands of feet tall figure. It was as if a sword had cut a 1,000 feet tall mountain. The rain of light scattered and disappeared. As Lin Sun expected, after this overly easy Great Path competition, the Chaos Dao fruit did not appear. However, the number of Dao karma distributed in the heavenly cycle Dao law had decreased by 1. There were only 1613 of them. Lin Sun was not disappointed. Instead, he was a little interested. Since ancient times, all the cultivators who had left the mortal transformation realm had left behind their Dao karma in the heavenly cycle. But even after so many years, the number of Dao karma in the heavenly cycle was only slightly more than 1600. Of course, there must have been people like Xia Ji in the past who defeated the Dao karma manifestation and replaced it. However, compared to the tens of thousands of powerful figures scattered in the mortal transformation, the number of heavenly cycle Dao laws was still too small. This showed how cruel the Great Path competition was. However, this was not what Lin Sun was interested in. He suddenly realized a problem. For instance, his master, the master of the core dimension, Golden Cicada, Chun Linkong, the absolute beginning ruler, and many other terrifying existences who had entered the profound God domain, how could they not have left behind their own Dao karma in the mortal transformation realm? Then where was their Dao karma characteristics, and what was their ranking amongst the universe Dao laws? If I can find their karmic Dao images and fight them one by one, I might be able to find out how strong they were back in the mortal transcendent realm. Thinking of this, Lin suddenly felt a strong impulse in his heart. Just do it. All those years ago, they were in a similar situation as he was now. So a battle with their Dao characteristics was undoubtedly a different type of competition for the Grand Dao. At this point, Lin Sun was no longer in a rush to leave the mortal transcendent realm. After a while, Lin Sun came to the east gate of the imperial capital. A towering ancient tree was rooted here. The tree's bark was like the skin of an old dragon, and it was hard like divine iron. Its branches were like blades and were suffused with a ghastly and murderous aura. This was also a Dao karma characteristic. Looking at this ancient tree, Lin Sun recalled the scenes he had seen in the various cities of the Qin kingdom a few days ago. There are too many heavenly Dao laws in this world. If I can control all the other heavenly Dao laws with one rule, then I can make the billions of people in the 49 countries follow the same teachings. In this way, perhaps there will be no more chaotic, complicated, and bloody conflicts in this world. Lin Sun muttered to himself. There were more than 1,000 heavenly Dao laws distributed in the 49 countries, affecting billions of people in countless cities. But because of this, there were many contradictions and conflicts among the people in the world. Just like the collision between different civilizations. But if one Dao law could be the main Dao law and the other Dao laws could be supplementary, then no matter how many Dao laws appeared in the mortal transcendent realm in the future, they would be controlled and restrained. In this way, although it was not the great harmony of the world, it could make a big difference. This was the so-called all-embracing, all streams returning to the origin. Thinking of this, Lin Sun could not help but look a little strange. If I can really do this, then the powerful people in the world are educating the people, and I'm afraid I'm educating the powerful people in the world. Was it possible? Maybe. He would just have to take it one step at a time. The next moment, Lin Sun abandoned all distracting thoughts and looked at the towering ancient tree again. Whoosh! The ancient tree swayed and quietly turned into a black figure. She held a copper mace in each hand, and her long gray hair fluttered in the wind. Her aura was cold and mysterious. Nian Dongyue, known as the Transformation God Emperor, she left the mortal transcendent realm 330,000 years ago. Her Dao karma was ranked 417th in the heavenly Dao laws. Boom! The battle broke out. Nian Dongyue held the twin mace in her hands and struck down. Immediately, endless black lightning rolled down, covering the sky and the earth. The destructive aura was shocking. Lin Sun raised his hand and made a stroke. The sword chi burst out and cut across the sky, tearing the sky and the black thunder all over the sky. Bang! Nian Dongyue's figure also seemed to be torn apart. It split into two and disappeared. Now, the mortal transcendent realm had one less heavenly Tao law. My path to the top will begin in the Qin kingdom. Lin Sun took out the Tao Karma Jade Archive. It showed the distribution of more than 1,000 Tao Karma Dharma, and these became the goal of Lin Sun's journey. In the following period of time, Lin Sun walked alone, passing through cities and mountains. Every time he came to a place with a Tao Karma Dharma, he would stop and fight with it. Then, he swaggered away. His footprints were like a long line, constantly spreading to other places in the mortal transcendent realm. Occasionally, he would stop and meditate, watching the mountains and rivers, watching the people, and comprehending nature. But most of the time, he spent it hurrying along the road and fighting. What was cultivation? Life was everywhere. What his body felt, what his mind experienced, what he saw, and what he experienced in the world were all accumulations and comprehensions. For the current Lin Sun, time was no longer limited, the world was no longer hindered, the world was free to roam, and the Tao was free to gallop. What he wanted was a free and unfettered state of cultivation. As the saying goes, be ambitious and your heart is wandering. Of course, Lin Sun was completely unaware of the commotion he had stirred up in the mortal transcendent realm as he continued on his journey. A month later. Profound God Domain, Feiyun World. This was the place where the 9 divisions of Taichu resided. In an enormous hall that stood towering beneath the sky, a low and solemn voice resounded. Everyone, I just received news from the mortal transcendent realm. In the past month, Lin Sun has traveled through 19 countries in the mortal transcendent realm, including the Qin Kingdom, the Yun Kingdom, the Wei Kingdom, and the Banyan Kingdom. Now, he has defeated 533 Tao Karma Dharma. The person who spoke was a young man in a feathered robe and a Taoist crown. His entire body was coiled with a light violet rain, and his Dharma was shocking. Qin Yangzi, the Kuan Division's heavenly mandate realm lord, the boundless realm lord whose cultivation was close to perfection. There were 8 figures seated at other places in the hall. There were men and women, young and old, and every single one of them possessed boundlessly terrifying auras. They seemed like supreme gods. These 8 figures were respectively the heavenly mandate realm lords of the other 8 divisions. Every single one of them possessed monstrous cultivation and great authority. This kid is actually so formidable? So in this way, his cultivation isn't far from the heavenly mandate realm lords like us? The 8 heavenly mandate realm lords couldn't help but be shocked, and they were in an uproar. I don't know exactly how formidable his cultivation is. All I know now is that amongst the 533 Tao Karma Dharma he defeated, the strongest one is ranked at the 93rd rank of the universe Tao law. When he spoke up to hear, Qin Yangzi gazed at a gold-robed old man. Brother Yuan He, that's probably the Tao Karma Dharma he left behind all those years ago, right? Everyone was shocked in their hearts. The gold-robed old man was called Ming He, and he was the Sun clan's Tao Lord of Destiny, and he possessed unfathomable resources and reserves. Back then, the Tao Karma I left behind in the mortal transformation realm was ranked at the bottom, but there was still a huge gap between me and the boundless Taoist Lord back then. Even if Lin Sun managed to defeat the Tao Karma I left behind, it doesn't prove anything. Maringha said with an indifferent face. Among us, the one with the highest ranking in the heavenly cycle law of the mortal transcendent realm was Qian Division's Destiny Tao Lord, Brother Pei Tuesday. He was ranked 21st, and the last was Brother Ku He, who was ranked 93rd. Qin Yangzi said, presently, this kid has swept through 533 karmic daos in merely a month of time, and even the karmic daos left behind by Brother Ming, he weren't a match for him. This is sufficient to prove how terrifying this kid's combat strength is. He paused for a moment and continued. Not to mention that in the past, have all of you ever seen someone be formidable to the point of challenging over 500 karmic Tao characteristics, yet still be unable to draw down the chaotic Tao fruit? Everyone's eyes flickered with uncertainty. Qin Yangzi, after saying so much, what exactly do you want? Someone asked. Qin Yangzi glanced at the crowd and said, I hope that we can ask Miss to tell her everything about Lin Sun, and let her decide what to do next. Everyone was a little hesitant. Was it really worth making such a big fuss over a mere Lin Sun? Someone said in a low voice, no matter how powerful this kid is, he is still in the mortal transcendent realm, and our forces are all distributed in the bound of universe, the ninth heaven, which is beyond our reach. It's better to wait for a while. If he really has the ability to kill his way to the bound of universe in the future, we can mobilize all our forces to deal with him. Qin Yangzi frowned and couldn't help reminding them. Everyone, let's not talk about anything else. When Lin Sun really has the chance to kill his way to the bound of universe, he will obtain at least 8 chaotic Tao fruits. After refining these chaotic Tao fruits, his cultivation is bound to be much stronger than it is now. Isn't it a little too late to deal with him at that time? Speaking of this, Qin Yangzi sighed softly and said, well, I'd better go to see Miss and let her decide. At this moment, an old ape with 2 swords on his back suddenly appeared outside the hall. His tall figure blocked the door, giving people great pressure. Ape Ancestor. Suddenly, the 9 Masters of Destiny Path stood up and showed awe. Miss has been kept by Hierarch's side. It's up to you to decide what to do in the future. Ape Ancestor said in an old voice. He didn't walk into the hall, nor did he mean to stay any longer. After saying such a sentence, he turned around and left. Chapter 32:45. The Ape Ancestor came quickly and left even faster. The 9 Destiny Path Lords all had different expressions on their faces. Miss was left by the Sect Master's side? Did the Sect Master already have a chance to escape from the sword lock? Qin Yangzi, now you've seen it as well. It's already impossible for the young Miss to give us any more orders. In my opinion, you still have to keep your composure. Someone said softly. But I can't wait any longer. Qin Yangzi heaved a long sigh, then turned around and left. In my opinion, Qin Yangzi's worries shouldn't be underestimated. Lin Sun is seen as an unprecedented variable. It's undoubtedly the safest way to get him under our control as soon as possible. The golden-robed old man, Pring He, said in a deep voice. Pring He, the Sun tribe's forces are distributed in the dark world of the third heaven. If Lin Sun really has the ability to enter, we can assassinate him. Someone suggested. The dark world, the third heaven of the spirit's realm. It was a turbid world that couldn't be sensed. Everywhere was shrouded in mist and murderous aura. Even a boundless realm cultivator couldn't detect it with his divine sense. It was the strangest and most dangerous place. That depends on whether Lin Sun can reach the dark world alive. Pring He said softly. Lin Sun was still walking in the mortal transformation. Even if he left the mortal transformation, he had to kill his way out of the calamity realm of the second heaven. By the time he reached this step, who knew how long it would be? Time flew and another 2 months had passed. The mortal transformation. On a vast river, Lin Sun steered a skiff and drifted on it. He drank wine as he looked at the Tao Karma Jade archive in his hand. Calculating the time, it had already been 3 months since he began his journey in the mortal transcendent realm. In these 3 months, he could cover almost all of the 49 countries in the mortal transformation. Most of the Tao Karma images he encountered along the way were defeated. Only a dozen or so Tao Karma images were left by Lin Sun. The reason he didn't compete with these 10+ karmic Tao images was because the auras of these karmic Tao images far surpassed the others and were extremely formidable. Almost all of them were left behind by terrifying existences ranked in the top 20 of the heavenly cycle Tao laws. For example, the one left behind by Lin Sun's master, the master of the heart dimension, was a Tao stele with a picture of the slanting moon and 3 stars. Lin Sun couldn't help being shocked when he learned about this. But later on, he'd asked around and found out that regardless of whether it was the sovereign of absolute beginning, the mysterious swordsman, or Chen Shi, all of them hadn't left behind their Tao karmic images. It seemed like the Grand Tao was nameless. Because of this, Lin Sun was in a low mood. His master, the master of the square inch, appeared to be the first in the heavenly cycle Tao laws. However, compared to the beginning, Chen Shi, and that swordsman, he seemed to be slightly inferior. Later, Lin Sun saw the Taoism form left by Golden Cicada. It was a lifelike golden cicada, lying on an auspicious cloud and looking up at the sky. Then, Lin Sun learned that Golden Cicada's Dharma of Karma was also ranked first among the heavenly cycle laws of the mortal transformation. Then, Lin Sun saw the Dharma of Black Crow, Ape Ancestor, and Chen Linkong, the first servant of Tai Chu, who also ranked first. In other words, the master of the core dimension, Golden Cicada, Chen Linkong, Black Crow, and the Ape Ancestor were tied for first place. These incredible scenes made Lin Sun feel incredulous. Under what sort of circumstances would allow the 5 supreme existences to be neck and neck in the struggle for supremacy? Lin Sun couldn't figure it out. After that, he saw the Dharma of the patriarchs of the Yuan sect, Spirit sect, Voodoo sect, and Zen sect. All of them ranked in the top 10. Apart from them, there were some unfamiliar names, such as the 9-leaf demon ancestor, Di Qing, and heaven-breaking Lu. All of them ranked in the top 20. However, Lin Sun discovered something shocking. Starting from the 11th ranked 9-leaf demon ancestor to the 20th ranked heaven-breaking Lu, the Dharma of Karma they left behind was filled with the aura of death. This meant that the terrifying existences ranked 11th to 20th, from the 9-leaf demon ancestor to heaven-breaking Lu, had all fallen. How on earth did they die? During this period of time, Lin Sun had inquired about this matter from many powerful figures, but most of the answers he received were rumors. Some said that the 9-leaf demon ancestor and the others had fallen on the path of severing. Some said that because they refused to serve the absolute beginning ruler, they were killed by the absolute beginning ruler in a fit of rage. Some even said that the 9-leaf demon ancestor and the others had encountered an unfathomable disaster when they were exploring some forbidden secrets in the ruins of Tao. In short, there were many different opinions about this mystery. The only thing that was certain was that the 9-leaf demon ancestor and the other terrifying existences had fallen a long time ago. It was so long ago that some of the older figures could not recall the specific time. Of course, the reason why Lin Sun did not fight the top-ranked Dharma of Karma was not because he was afraid. Instead, he planned to fight them last. After all, if he attracted the Chaos Tao fruit after the battle, he would have no choice but to leave the mortal transformation realm in advance. How could he fight the other Dharma of Karma? The river that Lin Sun was sailing on was called the Tonggu River. It flowed through the Song Nation. There was an extremely powerful Dharma of Karma in the upper reaches of the Tonggu River. It was a chain that lay across the Tonggu River. The chain was left behind by Pei Tu, the master of the heavenly fate path of the Qian sect. According to the information Lin Sun obtained, Pei Tu's Tao was ranked 21st in the universe Tao law. Pei Tu was ranked the highest amongst the 9 masters of the heavenly fate path of the 9 divisions. The Dharma of the other 8 masters of the heavenly fate path had been defeated by Lin Sun a long time ago. If I'm still unable to attract the Chaos Tao fruit after the battle with Pei Tu, then I'll fight the Dharma of Karma left behind by the 4 great ancestral courts. Lin Sun thought. Lin Sun did not intend to fight the Dharma of Karma left behind by the great figures like the 9-leaf demon ancestor and Duan Tianlu. After all, the Tao energy was the only thing that they had left in the world. It would be a pity if they disappeared just like that. However, even though Lin Sun had defeated numerous Dharma of Karma all along the way, he didn't dare to be arrogant. After all, these Dharma of Karma were left behind a long time ago. They merely represented the cultivation of those great figures when they were in the mortal transformation realm. Now that countless years had passed, those great figures were destined to obtain a lot of chaos Tao fruits along the way when they were breaking through the 9 heavenly gate. Their current cultivation was destined to be incomparable to that of the past. Moreover, the ranking in the universe Tao law of the mortal transformation realm did not affect those great figures' future achievement. Those who were ranked lower did not necessarily mean that their cultivation was not powerful enough. Is that Pei Tu's Dharma of Karma? On the boat, Lin Sun saw a chain that stretched across the river. It was as thick as a bucket and dark and dull. The chain surged with a dark green light. From afar, the iron chain stretched across the river. It was like a natural moat that could block everything in the world. Its aura was extremely heavy and heavy. Many great figures had already gathered on both sides of the Tonggu River. They seemed to have been waiting for a long time. When they saw the boat carrying Lin Sun over, the eyes of these great figures lit up. They had indeed been waiting for a long time here. In the past 3 months, Lin Sun had fought all over the world. He had swept through the world without suffering a single setback. He had already caused a huge uproar in the mortal transformation realm and attracted the attention of countless people. There was no need to think too much. They already knew that Lin Sun would definitely come to the Tonggu River. As expected, Lin Sun had come. Up until now, the number of Dharma of Karma that has been defeated by Lin Sun has already reached 800. The Dharma of Karma that is ranked below the top 100 are no longer in Lin Sun's eyes, someone sighed. Too many things had happened in the past 3 months. It was enough to make it unforgettable for anyone. If it was me who defeated one of the Dharma of Karma, I would probably have attracted the Chaos Tao fruit and entered the heavenly gates. But Lin Sun has yet to attract the Chaos Tao fruit. Compared to him, it really makes one lower their head and sigh at their inferiority. Someone sighed. There were tens of thousands of boundless realm great figures in the mortal transformation realm, but there were very few who could shake those Dharma of Karma. But Lin Sun had swept through 800 Dharma of Karma in a mere 3 months. Compared to him, who could not lower their heads in dejection. Everyone, don't be discouraged. There are only a few people like Lin Sun throughout the countless years. He is destined to be different from us. There were also people who comforted their companions. To all the great figures in the world, Lin Sun was a legend that they could only look up to. They could not even feel jealous of him because the difference between them was too great. Not to mention catching up, they could not even get close to him. Amidst the discussions, the great figures on both sides of the river were paying attention to Lin Sun's movements. Everyone knew that an unparalleled battle was about to unfold. At the same time, Lin Sun also noticed the great figures on both sides of the river. However, he was already used to such a scene. In the past few days, wherever he appeared, there would be spectators waiting at the side. Lin Sun put away the wine pot and dusted off his clothes. When he looked at the metal chain again, his entire aura had quietly changed. Whoosh! Suddenly, the thick, pitch-black metal chain shook and surged with a thick and majestic Tao light. Then, it turned into a tall man dressed in a navy blue robe. He stood on a black sun, and a black divine chain formed from the power of rules appeared in front of him. It was like a black python swimming around, and his power shook the heavens and the earth. Pei Tu, the Qian Division's Destiny Tao Lord, had left the mortal transformation realm 290,000 years ago. At that time, his Tao Karma was ranked 21st on the heavenly cycle Tao law. The entire place was silent. All the great figures' attention was drawn to him. The battle was about to begin. Feeling the power emanating from Pei Tu, Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. This guy was very strong. He was stronger than Qi Qianji and Tian Xingzi. He was the strongest opponent Lin Sun had fought in the past 3 months. Chapter 3246. Although Pei Tu was strong, the pressure he brought to Lin Sun wasn't that great. I can decide the outcome of the battle with one all-out blow. However, it's better to take a look at this guy's background. If we meet again in the future, it'll come in handy. Lin Sun murmured in his heart. Clatter, the long black chain in Pei Tu's hand danced wildly, setting off a black storm all over the sky and striking at Lin Sun. Lin Sun raised a wave of sword qi and fought fiercely. Boom! The battle between the two of them above the Tonggu River attracted the attention of all the almighties present. 10 moves, 100 moves, 300 moves. As time went by, the battle became more and more intense, causing a burst of exclamations in the field. But some powerful figures were very calm. They had seen Lin Sun fight many times and could roughly judge that Lin Sun wasn't using his full strength at this moment. He was contending with Pei Tu's Tao power. His purpose was very simple, to explore Pei Tu's Tao power. As expected, when the battle reached 800 moves, a sword qi suddenly swept out from Lin Sun's body and slashed in the void. Puff! Pei Tu's figure was smashed into nothingness. He won again. People were startled, their emotions complicated and subtle. The Tao fruit of chaos hasn't appeared yet. Some people also noticed that after defeating Pei Tu's Tao power, Lin Sun still hadn't attracted the Tao fruit of chaos. Everyone couldn't help but be shocked. Lin Sun didn't pay attention to this. The Tao power that defeated Pei Tu was within his expectation. He planned to leave and recuperate for a period of time before going to compete with the top 10 characters. Fellow Taoist Lin, may I know which great figure's karmic Tao image you're going to fight next? Seeing that Lin Sun was about to leave, someone dared to ask. Heaven Wizard. Lin Sun left a name and swaggered away. Heaven Wizard. Everyone present was shocked and they gasped without end. Pei Tu's Tao power was ranked 21st in the Universal Tao laws, and Heaven Wizard's Tao power was ranked 9th. From the gap in the rankings, it could be seen how terrifying the Tao power left by Heaven Wizard was. It was destined to be incomparable to Pei Tuesday. All the great figures present here were clearly aware that the current Heaven Shaman was a true, boundless Tao Lord, and he'd slaughtered his way into the profound God domain a very long time ago. Although Pei Tu was also the boundless Tao Lord, he was still lacking when compared to Heaven Shaman. Come, let's go to the Zhou Nation's Thousand Bird Mountain. The Heavenly Wizard's karmic Dharma form is on this mountain. Immediately, someone left in a hurry. On the same day, the news that Lin Sun was going to fight against the Heaven Shaman's karmic Dharma idol spread throughout the mortal transcendent realm. In a deep mountain, Lin Sun sat on the ground and meditated to feel his own qi. In these 3 months of time, he'd fought over 800 times, and every single opponent he faced was a great figure that had stepped onto an eternal path towards the Tao. All of their paths towards the Tao were different, yet all of them had their own profundities. Winning or losing was not the most important thing for Lin Sun to see so many incredible supreme Taos when he fought with them. This also brought him a lot of inspiration, and many comprehensions were born in his heart. Now, Lin Sun was sorting out the inspiration and comprehension he'd accumulated during this period of time. As time passed, a supreme path towards the Tao gradually emerged on Lin Sun's body. Vigorous, violent, domineering, and ostentatious, it displayed endless profundities. This was the path towards the Tao that Hing Qiu, the owner of the bronze cauldron in front of the Taoist temple in the Qing kingdom's capital, sought. If such a scene were to be seen by others, they would probably be frightened to death. After all, the path of a boundless realm existence was extremely difficult and mysterious. Other than him, no one else could see through its profundities. But now, the path that belonged to Hing Qiu had been deduced by Lin Sun. Not long after, Lin Sun's qi suddenly changed, and a new supreme path towards the Tao appeared, replacing Heng Chio's path towards the Tao. This new path towards the Tao was filled with lively and seething vitality. It seemed to be evergreen, embracing yin and yang, and it had an endless profundities. This was the path towards the Tao of the owner of the ancient tree before the eastern gate of the Qing Kingdom's imperial palace, Nian Dongyue. After that, numerous supreme paths towards the Tao surged into appearance on Lin Sun in the following period of time, and the profundities contained within them were deduced and revealed by his own qi. These scenes seemed to be extremely inconceivable, and if news of it were to spread, it would definitely shock the surroundings and cause the world to be stirred. It was even to the extent that those at the same cultivation realm as him would be terrified. After all, Lin Sun had merely fought with those Tao manifestations, yet he seemed to have seen through the core essence of their paths towards the Tao, and he'd grasped and deduced them one by one. How terrifying was this! This was the profundity of the profundities of rebirth after they'd transformed to such a state. It could transform the profundities of a myriad of Taos into one's heart, and it could develop the principles of the world into the Tao. It was also in the mortal transformation dimension that Lin Sun had unearthed a taboo like the profundities of rebirth, and it allowed him to see through his opponent's Taos before fusing them into his own Taos and deducing them. Of course, the precondition was that he had to defeat his opponents first. After an entire month, Lin Sun's aura changed, and he deduced the path of Pei Tu, the master of destiny path of the Qian tribe. In the end, accompanied by a burst of rumbling, Lin Sun's qi gradually became gloomy and silent. At this point, the profundities of more than 800 eternal Taos had all been fused into Lin Sun's Tao. Extract the essence, discard the dregs, and finally fuse them together. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun felt that his cultivation had improved greatly, and his strength was no longer comparable to when he'd just entered the mortal transformation dimension. Calculating the time carefully, it had only been a little more than 4 months since he'd arrived in the mortal transformation dimension. Although I didn't attract the chaotic Tao fruit, to be able to obtain so many mysteries of the Tao in the battle of the Tao is already no less than a fortune for me, Lin Sun muttered in his heart. After a while, he stood up, put his hands behind his back, and flashed leisurely into the distance. It was time to compete with the Tao manifestation of the voodoo cult's patriarch. 2 days later. Zhou Country, 1,000 Birds Mountain. This mountain was named after the shape of 1,000 birds spreading their wings in the sky, and it was a first-class historical site in Zhou Country. At the peak of 1,000 Birds Mountain, there was a white bone altar that was 9 feet high. It was chiseled with ancient fiend god totems, and it emitted a desolate, chaotic, and destructive aura. This was the Tao manifestation of the voodoo cult's patriarch, Heaven Witchcraft. When Lin Sun's figure appeared out of thin air, he saw that countless powerful figures had already gathered in the area near 1,000 Birds Mountain. Obviously, they had been waiting here for a long time. At this moment, all eyes were gathered on Lin Sun, as if they'd seen a peerless legend arrive here. Lin Sun didn't care about this. He looked at the altar made of white bones. Boom! The white bone altar suddenly rumbled, and a tall and mighty figure appeared. He wore a beast robe, and his hair was like a halberd. Obscure and rough totem light emerged on his skin. Standing there casually, he seemed like a supreme fiend god that had suppressed the ancient wilderness. Heaven Witchcraft. The voodoo cult's patriarch was ranked 9th in the heavenly cycle Tao law. In the ruins of Tao, he was a top existence that was formidable to the point that everyone in the world knew about it. Although it was merely the energy of Tao that he'd left in this world all those years ago, the aura it emitted still caused all the nearby powerful figures to feel suffocated and tremble in their hearts. Go! As soon as Heaven's shaman appeared, he waved his fingers like a fan in the void. Boom! The heavens and the earth seemed to have returned to the primordial times. The heavens and the earth were in chaos, and everything was in turmoil. Fiend gods soared through the sky, roared in the starry sky, and shattered the sun and moon. Ferocious birds descended to the world, and their wings covered an area of 80,000 kilometers, causing mountains and rivers to collapse. The scenes of turmoil revealed an aura of destruction. This was the path of Heaven Shaman. He rose in turmoil, attained Tao in chaos, and attained eternity in destruction. At this moment, such a chaotic world emerged like a primordial world, and it was like a supreme curtain of the Heaven Tao was pressing down, and it was terrifying to an unimaginable extent. Lin Sun's sleeves fluttered as he flashed into the primordial world of the Heaven Tao. At that instant, it seemed as if a ruler was holding down the fort, and the chaotic primordial world returned to calm. The mountains and rivers were clear, auspicious clouds flowed, and all things flourished. Fiend gods roared in the starry sky, but they dissipated in front of Lin Sun, and then they bowed in worship. Ferocious birds soared through the sky, but they transformed into docile birds that danced around Lin Sun and cried cheerfully. The entire primordial world suddenly revealed a peaceful and tranquil scene. After that, Lin Sun flicked his sleeves, and with a rumble, the entire primordial world of the Heaven Tao transformed into a ray of light that dissipated between his fingers. The spectators in the distance were dumbfounded and shocked. The attack of Heaven Shaman deduced how terrifying the great Tao rules were, and its aura of destruction was world-shocking. It was sufficient to easily suppress most boundless realm existences in this world. But such an attack was casually resolved by Lin Sun, and it dissipated between his fingers. This is a supreme battle of the great Tao, just like the collision between the Tao laws of the universe. The strength of every move is like the might of the Heaven Tao, and it's indescribable. Someone spoke with a trembling voice, and he was unable to restrain himself with excitement. Rise! Under the sky, the mighty and lofty figure of Heaven Shaman raised his hands, and an expanse of the source of destruction surged out. For a time, violent winds blew, lightning raged, and doomsday-like calamities surged out like a rainstorm. The scene of God's weeping blood faintly appeared, and all living beings transformed into a sea of blood that covered the ground amidst the destruction. All the mighty figures in the nearby area retreated in horror and fled far away. Lin Sun raised his brows and stretched out his hand to grab. Swoosh! A ray of light appeared abruptly like the edge of a sword. After that, all the phenomena formed from the source of destruction seemed like a canvas that had been torn apart, and they were easily torn through the sky and dispersed like rain. Rumble! Heaven Shaman stepped on the sky and charged over while utilizing his Tao. On the other hand, Lin Sun didn't hold back any longer, and he fought head-on with his own Tao. In the heavens and the earth, Heaven Shaman was like a god of destruction. Every single move he made reflected the phenomena of the heavens collapsing and the earth sinking, all living things being crushed, and the world withering away. That level of strength caused people to be extremely horrified from afar. But all of this was completely resolved by Lin Sun. His movements were simple and clean. He either slashed out with his sword, stabbed out with his finger, slapped out with his palm, or smashed out with his fist. But every single strike contained boundless profundities contained within it, and it faintly revealed a divine charm that suppressed the past, present, and future. It was extremely simple and unparalleled. Chapter 3247. The Great Tao is the simplest. In the battle, Lin Sun's mind was clear. His every move was accompanied by thousands of Tao and Dharma, but it was all integrated into a casual punch and a palm. Vaguely, it was as if all the flourishing had fallen, and the Tao was wonderful and natural. This heavenly shaman's path towards the Tao uses destruction as his foundation, yet he's able to forge eternal karma within destruction. He can be said to possess peerless talent that's rarely seen since the ancient times. During the battle, Lin Sun could clearly sense the power of the great path of Heaven Wizard. It wouldn't take too much effort to defeat the opponent, but Lin didn't do so. He was calmly experiencing such a struggle of Tao. This battle lasted for a long time. After an entire day and night passed, the heaven shaman's figure dispersed and vanished like a wisp of smoke. He hadn't been suppressed and defeated, and he'd been forcefully exhausted to the point of dispersing. Until the end of the battle, everyone was unable to recover from their shock for a long time, and there was shock and wonder on their faces. What shocked them was that even the powerful Taoist karma of Heaven Wizard was no match for Lin Sun. What was frustrating was that after this battle, Lin Sun still didn't attract the Chaos Tao fruit. This was undoubtedly too unbelievable, and even puzzling. Why was this happening? At the peak of Thousand Bird Mountain, under the sky, with his hands clasped behind his back, Lin Sun stood still in silence. There were numerous miraculous and unbelievable comprehensions in his heart, and they seemed like trickles of water that ceaselessly roiled, causing his mind to fall into a profound state of comprehension. After a long time, he restrained his thoughts and let out a light breath before he said in his heart, comparatively speaking, even though the Tao karma of the Heaven Shamans is extremely formidable, its path towards the Tao can only be considered to be on par with the Gon tribe's Master of Destiny, Pei Tu. Congratulations to fellow Taoist Lin for adding another great victory to your journey. Suddenly, a heavy voice resounded, and it revealed heartfelt admiration. Congratulations, fellow Taoist Lin. Congratulations, fellow Taoist Lin. Immediately, a wave of congratulations rang out in the surrounding area, echoing through the heavens and earth for a long time. Those experts had spent countless years in the mortal transformation realm, and they were all old monsters on the boundless path of cultivation. But now, when facing Lin Sun, they all had a sense of admiration, as if they were looking up to a high mountain. The one who understands the Tao is the teacher. Lin Sun had won more than 800 battles in less than 4 months, which was an unprecedented miracle. Compared to him, how could the heroes of the world not bow down and sigh in admiration? Lin Sun cupped his hands in obeisance with a smile. On the big road, we are all peers. I wish you all a better future. With that, he swaggered off. Guys, in my opinion, Lin Sun obviously consumed a lot of energy at the end of the battle. If someone attacked him at that time, suddenly, a gray-robed man spoke. But before he could finish speaking, the expressions of the Almighties standing near the gray-robed man changed slightly, and they distanced themselves from him. It was as if they wanted to draw a line with him. The gray-robed man immediately shut his mouth, and his expression changed. He seemed to be very wronged as he said, "Everyone, I was just saying. Why are you so nervous?" However, no one paid any attention to him. Instead, they hid even further away from him. Such a scene made the gray-robed man uneasy. After a while, he murmured bitterly, "Lin Sun's power has become so strong?" 7 days later. Soaring Dawn Lake, Long Nation. A battle of Tao was taking place. One was the Dharma of Tao left by Shur, the patriarch of Dhyana sect, which ranked 7th in the universal Taoism. The other was Lin Sun. The battle had been going on for 4 hours. Under the sky, the Buddhist country was vast and magnificent, and brilliant lotus flowers were floating everywhere. The chanting of sutras resounded like a tide. Vaguely, hundreds of millions of phantoms of the Buddhist country could be seen. There were Buddhas discussing Tao and Bodhisattvas explaining the Dharma, showing a grand atmosphere of boundless light and boundless bliss. This was the Tao of Shur, the patriarch of Dhyana sect, which was based on the Zen heart. Lin Sun, who was competing with him, sat alone in the void. His figure was ethereal and indifferent. There was neither a vision of Tao nor an earth-shattering power. It was plain. But the Buddhas couldn't shake his state of mind at all, and Shur Fa Bodhisattva couldn't hurt a hair on his body. Even the Yongchang Buddhist country, brilliant and boundless, couldn't invade the place where Lin Sun sat cross-legged. He was like a rock, unmoving as he watched, sensed, and experienced just like that, and he naturally possessed a calm and transcendent bearing. After a long time, the Buddha sighed and disappeared. The Buddhas shook their heads and disappeared. All the Buddhist countries in the sky disappeared, and even the ethereal sound of Sanskrit disappeared. Shi's figure also disappeared at this moment. Lin Sun stood up, shook his muscles and bones, took out the flagon and drank a mouthful of wine. He said with a smile, "Whether it's Buddha or devil, if they can't save me, they will become nothing in the blink of an eye." 10 days later. Dragon Sparrow Ridge, Star Bridge Country. Senior, sorry for offending you before. Lin Sun cupped his hands to salute. The battle made him defeat the Tao left by Su Yin, the patriarch of Spirit Sect. The rule power, which ranked 8th in the universal Taoism, also disappeared. Half a month later. On the Wind Cliff Mountain 800 miles away from Rome country. A sword swept across the sky and covered the 9 heavens. Countless stars fell with it, just like withering fireworks, and then dissipated. The 9 heavens galaxy was the Tao of Yuan-Chu, the patriarch of Yuan sect, a supreme Tao ranked 6th in the universal Taoism. Senior, if we meet again in the future, I will definitely treat you to a drink. Lin Sun cupped his hands. At this point, the Tao left by the patriarchs of the 4 ancestral courts were all defeated by Lin Sun. When the news came out, the entire mortal transformation world was shocked silent. Could it be that Lin Sun can be like Qin Linkong back then, challenging the heavens with his sword and ranking first? Some old antiques couldn't calm down, and their hearts trembled. Many years ago, Qin Linkong arrived at the mortal transformation world and traveled the world like a wild crane. He didn't fight, and just played around in the world. 33 years later, he swept across the sky with his sword and defeated the great Confucian immortal, who ranked first in the universal Taoism, and replaced him. This incident caused a great commotion in the mortal transformation world. Everyone thought that Qin Linkong's cultivation was already close to the peak of the boundless realm, which was why he was able to reach the top and stand shoulder to shoulder with the other 4 supreme existences. Lin Sun's Tao Fruit of Chaos hasn't appeared yet. This means that he has to defeat any one of the 5 Tao to have a chance to attract the Tao Fruit of Chaos and ascend the Heavenly Gate. But what if he loses? Then he will be trapped here like us. Even someone as powerful as him could be trapped in the mortal transcendent realm? The world was abuzz with discussions. It had been nearly half a year since Lin Sun entered the mortal transformation world, and he hadn't lost a single battle. But the situation now was different. Amongst the opponents before him, there were only 5 Tao manifestations that were comparable to the number 1 Tao laws of the universe. They were the Master of the Heart, Golden Cicada, Black Crow, Qin Linkong, and the Ape Ancestor. Each of them had unfathomable power. Lin Sun hadn't lost a single battle, and the Tao of the 4 ancestral courts patriarchs had been defeated one by one. But when Lin Sun's opponents were only the 5 supreme existences, no one was able to defeat him. He was certain that he would win. The 5 supreme existences were too powerful. Being on par with the first was an inconceivable thing, and it also showed how extraordinary the Tao karma left behind by those 5 existences was. While the world was in an uproar, Lin Sun had arrived at a place called Pine Mist City in the Tao Kingdom. A sword steel stood in a pine forest. The sword steel was 3 feet long, like a sword in the sky. It was left behind by Qin Linkong. After studying the sword steel for a moment, Lin Sun suddenly said, "I don't want outsiders to witness this battle. Please leave quickly." Just these words alone caused many great figures in the vicinity of Pine Mist City to be instantly surprised, and even though they were bewildered, they still sensibly retreated successively. Of course, they couldn't really leave. Such a battle would easily disturb the phenomena of the heavens and the earth and draw down the energy of the Tao laws in the surroundings. Even if one watched from afar, it was still possible to discern some clues. But Lin Sun had expected this, so he didn't say anything further. Clang! In the next moment, a clear and melodious sword howl resounded and surged in the sky above Pine Mist City, causing the clouds in all directions to collapse. The heavens and the earth suddenly changed, and it seemed as if they'd fallen into boundless dazzling sharpness that pierced their hearts to the point their hearts trembled, and even their divine sense felt as if it was being severed. It was even to the extent that many supreme existences that were watching from afar were injured on the spot, and their souls suffered a terrifying impact, causing their expressions to turn grim. It was also at this moment that they realized that it wasn't that Lin Sun didn't allow them to watch the battle, but they would surely suffer backlash if they watched the battle with their cultivations. For a time, the emotions of these supreme existences roiled, and they revealed shocked expressions. A single battle caused boundless realm figures like them to pay the price for even watching. How terrifying was this? Clang! Before they could react, another sword howl resounded, and its impetus wasn't inferior to the previous one at all. After that, sword chi filled the world within Pine Mist City, while sword insight shook the heavens. Everyone was clearly aware that the battle had already begun. But the details and profundities within it weren't something they were able to pry into. Time flowed by slowly. Those supreme existences could only wait amidst suffering. They were waiting for the outcome of the battle to be decided. But no one had expected that this battle would be so long. From the moment the sun rose to the moment it set, from the moment all living beings in the world busied themselves until they returned home and went to sleep, day after day passed. The clanging sword howls came and went, and most of the time, it fell into silence. When everyone thought the curtains to the battle had been drawn, another sword howl suddenly resounded. The entire Pine Mist City was filled with the glow of sharpness that didn't disperse for a long time. 7 days later. Profound God Domain, Primordial World. Chen Linkong sat casually far away from the thatched cottage, and he held a bamboo pole in his hand as he fished before a stream in a leisurely manner. The stream was clear, and there were utterly no fish. But Chen Linkong was enjoying it. Suddenly, his brows raised as he suddenly tossed away the bamboo pole in his hand, and then he stood up while his eyes revealed a wisp of undisguised surprise. This kid actually already possesses such attainments on the boundless path towards the Tao? Chen Linkong was stunned on the spot, and ripples arose in his heart. You're unable to calm down after being surpassed? Laughter resounded from within the thatched cottage. Grandfather, you know as well? Chen Linkong turned around with a subtle expression, and he seemed to be delighted yet slightly disappointed. The universe Tao laws were formed from the quintessence of the ruins of Tao. It can accommodate your sword Tao, yet it can't accommodate his grand Tao. The voice resounded once more from within the thatched cottage. This is the variable. Chen Linkong sighed lightly, and then he said with a smile, I don't mind being surpassed by him. After all, it's the Tao karma I left behind all those years ago. If Lin Sun is even unable to surpass me, then I'm afraid many people will be disappointed. Don't talk about all this now. Let's wait and see. The voice resounded slowly from within the thatched cottage, and it carried a trace of rare anticipation. Chapter 3248. State of Tao. Pine Mist City. In the misty pine forest, Lin Sun stood there. His chi was almost exhausted, and there were many shocking bloody sword marks on his skin. The battle lasted for 7 days. Lin Sun competed with Chen Linkong purely with sword Tao. Although he won in the end, his cultivation was almost exhausted. As for those injuries, Lin Sun didn't care. If I knew it would be like this, I wouldn't have tried to be brave and only competed with sword Tao. The corners of Lin Sun's mouth twitched, and he smiled bitterly. Suddenly, he raised his eyes and looked into the distance. Many powerful figures appeared in Pine Mist City, and they were approaching the pine forest. Soon, these powerful figures saw Lin Sun, and then they were horrified. How serious his injuries were! Even his entire body's chi activity was almost exhausted. This was the first time they saw Lin Sun in such a sorry state in a fight for the Tao. It could be seen from this how powerful the Tao left by Chen Linkong was after 7 days and 7 nights of fierce battle. Of course, Lin Sun won in the end. Even if it was a Pyrrhic victory, it was still shocking. At least Lin Sun had proved that his cultivation was sufficient to be ranked first in the heavenly cycle Tao laws by this battle. However, this was also the reason why people were puzzled, because the chaotic Tao fruit that belonged to Lin Sun still hadn't appeared. This simply overturned the understanding of those powerful figures present. Fellow Taoist Lin, I have a healing divine item. Someone took out a jade bottle and was about to hand it over. Seeing this, the others hurriedly took out various divine medicines and rare treasures to give to Lin Sun to heal his injuries. Seeing this, Lin Sun shook his head with a smile. Thank you for your kindness, but I can deal with these minor injuries myself. Suddenly, a piercingly cold voice resounded. Are they really just minor injuries? But why do I see that you're almost unable to hold on? Immediately after, a piercingly cold, killing intent surged into the scene, causing the atmosphere to change abruptly. A group of figures appeared out of thin air, led by an extraordinarily handsome man in a green robe. He didn't conceal his hatred and killing intent towards Lin Sun, and there was a trace of inexplicable excitement in his expression. Behind the man in a green robe were more than 10 powerful figures, and every one of them was in the boundless realm. When they looked at Lin Sun, their eyes were filled with coldness. Ji Tianqing, what are you doing? A nearby almighty spoke with a sullen expression. Ji Tianqing? Lin Sun's eyes showed a hint of understanding. It turned out to be this guy. All those years ago in the Ocean of Destiny, Xian, Hu, Lei Song, and the others had seized the opportunity to head to the ruins of Tao, and they'd given it to Ji Tianqing, Zhichong, and Yi Wuhan in the end. Now that Ji Tianqing suddenly appeared here with a group of people, Lin Sun was not surprised. Everyone, this matter has nothing to do with all of you, so it's best if you don't get involved. Otherwise, you won't be able to get away if you get involved in this grudge. Ji Tianqing glanced at the almighties nearby and said coldly. Many mighty figures' expressions changed. There were also people who sneered, not fearing Ji Tianqing and the others. I didn't see you all dare to show yourselves before, but now that Tao friend Lin is in a bad situation, you all really are despicable. Old monstering, are you going to get involved? An old man with a white beard beside Ji Tianqing asked with a hoarse voice. The supreme being who sneered earlier immediately hesitated. Who is Ji Shi to you? Suddenly, Lin Sun looked at Ji Tianqing and asked. You're about to die, and you want to claim your relationship with me? Ji Tianqing sneered. No, I just want to choose a way for you to die. Lin Sun also laughed. Alright, cut the crap. Do you want to die together or one by one? His chi was obviously extremely weak, but his expression was calm, and he was talking and laughing freely. His demeanor made many powerful figures nearby secretly admire him. Ji Tianqing and the others couldn't help but be surprised. How could they not know how powerful Lin Sun's cultivation was now? In the past 6 months, the whole mortal world had been talking about things related to Lin Sun, and each of them could be said to be extremely sensational. This even made Ji Tianqing and the others give up the idea of revenge many times. But this time, when they learned that Lin Sun and Chen Lingkong's Taoism had been fighting for many days without a clear winner, they finally realized that the opportunity had come. Sure enough, when they arrived, they saw that Lin Sun was already seriously injured, and his chi was on the verge of drying up. It seemed that at this moment, any one of them could easily kill him. But now, they were a little uncertain about Lin Sun's challenge. It was because Lin Sun's power was too great, and his strength had already shocked the world. As the saying went, the tiger's prestige still existed even after death, and the dragon's Taoism still existed. Who wouldn't be afraid of him? Why, you're already here, but you don't dare to make a move? Lin Sun's words were filled with sarcasm. Ji Tianqing took a deep breath and said, Everyone, let's attack together. If something goes wrong, we'll retreat immediately. Okay. The people around him agreed. But just when they were about to make a move, Lin Sun spoke again. Seniors, let me deal with these idiots who are courting death. His voice spread between heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing and the others were stunned at first, and then their expressions changed. In the range of their divine senses, a group of figures appeared in the distance. It was Xingjian Gorge, Fu Nanli, Ren Futian, the Mountain Wind Path Master, Xiao He Mo Beis, and Mu Changyun. At the same time, Sun Daoyan and God Lord Linglong appeared out of thin air in another direction. The situation instantly changed. These bastards didn't dare to show themselves before, but they've finally revealed themselves this time. Xingjian Gorge chuckled. No one knew that in the last 3 months, Xingjian Gorge and the others had been following Lin Sun in every struggle of the Great Tao. Their goal was simple. They were worried that their enemies would take advantage of this opportunity to cause trouble. This is called courting death. The nearby Sun Daoyan coldly said. Young friend Lin, why don't you let us deal with these people? God Lord Linglong's voice was as gentle as flowing water. Ha ha ha, Senior is also worried that this Lin won't be able to fight? Lin Sun threw his head back and laughed, his voice echoing through the surroundings. Let's go. The hearts of Ji Tianqing and the others sank. They didn't care if Lin Sun was just putting on an act or not. They decisively decided to retreat. But at this moment, clang! A bolt of sword chi suddenly appeared, and with a wave of Lin Sun's sleeve, it shot through the air. In an instant, around Ji Tianqing, a total of 11 boundless realm major power silhouettes had just carried out spatial translocation when they suddenly split into pieces, fresh blood splattering out. It was like a blossoming of scarlet fireworks. This terrifying scene almost caused Ji Tianqing's soul to leap out of his body. But in the next moment, he didn't dare to move recklessly. This was because a wisp of sword chi had silently reached his throat. The sword chi was suffused with the power of the laws, and Ji Tianqing could smell an intense aura of death. The nearby experts were all shocked by this sight, and they couldn't help but look at Lin Sun. They saw that Lin Sun's blood-drenched figure was like a withered tree that had come back to life, and a peerless vitality was rising and exploding. In just a few blinks of an eye, all the wounds on his body had disappeared. Other than his blood-stained clothes, there was no other sign of injury. Even his exhausted chi activity was recovering at a crazy rate. Could it be that Lin Sun was pretending earlier? Many experts had a strange look on their faces. When they looked at Ji Tianqing again, there was a hint of pity in their eyes. These guys were really stupid to the point of courting death. At this moment, Ji Tianqing's expression was uncertain, and he said, "Didn't you ask me about the relationship between Ji Shi and me? Let me tell you, she's my grandniece." Everyone had a strange look on their faces. Previously, Ji Tianqing was sure that Lin Sun was trying to curry favor with him, but now that he was about to die, he revealed his relationship with the woman named Ji Shi. This was clearly begging for mercy. Puff! Before anyone could react, the sword chi at his throat cut off Ji Tianqing's head, and even his spirit was smashed into pieces by the sword chi. Everyone was startled. However, Lin Sun shook his head. He respected Ji Shi, but he didn't respect those who regarded him as an enemy. "Seniors, how about going for a drink?" Lin Sun looked at the people of Travel Sword Gorge and said with a smile. "That's for the best." The people of Travel Sword Gorge laughed. On this day, the news of Lin Sun defeating Chen Linkong's Dharmalaksana spread, once again shocking the entire mortal transformation. And the suicidal behavior of Ji Tianqing and the others became a joke in the mortal transformation. Another half a month passed. Lin Sun's figure appeared in a nameless canyon in Snow Country. A scripture appeared here, flowing with black and white light, intertwining with each other, creating a wonderful scene of pure and turbid blending and the rotation of yin and yang. Boom! When Lin Sun's chi spread over, the scripture suddenly opened, reflecting a black and white aura that soared into the sky, and finally turned into an extremely tall old ape. He carried 2 swords on his back and was dressed in a gray robe. When his eyes opened and closed, black and white light flowed, frightening people. Ape Ancestor, an old servant of the absolute beginning ruler. Since the absolute beginning ruler was trapped in the sword lock, he had been serving the absolute beginning ruler's first servant, Black Crow. His Dharmalaksana had long been ranked first in the heavenly Tao laws. Clang! Clang! Behind Ape Ancestor, 2 Taoist swords, one black and one white, rose into the sky. The vast sword intent turned into pure and turbid air. The pure air formed the sky, and the turbid air formed the earth. It was compatible with yin and yang, and it was mysterious and unpredictable. In the twinkling of an eye, heaven and earth seemed to have turned into a Tai Chi diagram, and the sword intent rushed into it. With a thought of Ape Ancestor, all the power of the sword intent enveloped Lin Sun. The perfect yin and yang Tao of Tai Chi. Lin Sun leaped up and met it. Boom! A great battle broke out. This battle wasn't any weaker than the battle with Chen Linkong. The difference was that Lin Sun and Chen Linkong had been fighting with Sword Tao. At this moment, Lin Sun was no longer limited to the power of one Tao, but released all his Taoism. One day later, clang! An earth-shattering collision sounded. Lin Sun's fist force, like a furnace that could suppress the past, the present and the future, hit the black and white swords in the hands of Ape Ancestor. Then, the 2 swords exploded inch by inch. Boom! The yin and yang Tao, which had turned into a Tai Chi diagram, collapsed like crumbs of paper. Ape Ancestor's towering figure dissipated amidst the destruction. Looking at Lin Sun again, although he was injured, his chi was like a sword edge in the sky, unshakable. Chapter 3249. Mysterious God Realm. Black Mysterious World. Ape Ancestor sat cross-legged with 2 swords in front of him. One black and one white, they reflected each other. The white sword was called Qing Pingle. The black sword was called Partridge Sky. The name was given by the absolute beginning ruler, and it was said to be a name of the mortal world. To Ape Ancestor, the name was not important. What was important was that this pair of swords had long been a part of his path. They had accompanied him to conquer various eras, and they had accompanied him in the endless years of cultivation. The swords were like his life. I wonder why the sect leader left Miss there. Was it to let Miss avoid trouble, or was it because he was worried that Miss would cause trouble? Or both? Ape Ancestor's fingers gently stroked the pair of swords as he fell into deep thought. The sect leader's thoughts were as deep as the sea. Especially after arriving at the ruins of Tao, he was even more unfathomable. Back then, when he was trapped by the swordsman's sword lock, the sect leader did not have any complaints. Instead, he sighed and said that it was sad that there was one less opponent in the world. Ape Ancestor did not understand. It was the power of the sword lock that had trapped the sect leader for countless eras, but why did he not hate the swordsman at all? On the contrary, after the swordsman chose to recultivate in reincarnation, the sect leader felt desolate. Suddenly, Ape Ancestor's fingers that were stroking the 2 swords stopped. Then, his eyes suddenly narrowed, and an uncontrollable look of surprise appeared on his face. That Lin Sun actually defeated my law of Tao? Clang! Clang! The black and white swords vibrated restlessly. From this, it could be seen how disturbed Ape Ancestor's state of mind was. After a while, Ape Ancestor stood up and hesitated for a long time. In the end, he sighed and gave up on the idea of paying a visit to the sect leader and Mississippi. Perhaps, this is the variable that the sect leader wants to see? Ape Ancestor murmured. Mortal Transformation Realm. After defeating Ape Ancestor's law of Tao, Lin Sun cultivated for half a month before setting off again. Great Wind Mountain, Qi Kingdom. This mountain was tens of thousands of meters high, and there was a temple built on it. In the temple, there was a statue of a god. In the past, there were many people who worshipped it. On this day, Lin Sun came. He seemed like a tourist as he walked up the stairs leisurely and calmly, and all along the way, He couldn't help but sigh lightly in his heart as he looked at those people that brought along their families to climb up the mountain path just to pray. For ordinary people, when they were powerless to change something, they would usually choose to place their hopes on burning incense and praying. However, as a cultivator, Lin soon knew that the prayers of the masses in the mortal transformation realm were destined to be nothing more than a mirage. It is better to pray than pray to God. Lin soon came to the top of Gale Mountain, where there stood a magnificent temple with row upon row of buildings and abundant incense. At the side of the temple was a pond with lotus flowers and fish swimming in it. Lin Sun's eyes fell on a black lotus seed at the bottom of the pond. Boom! In the next moment, the black lotus seed glowed and transformed into the figure of a black-clothed young woman that soared into the sky. Her snow-white hair fluttered to her slender waist, and her pair of ruby-red eyes were translucent and gorgeous. Black Crow, the first Tao attendant under Absolute Beginning. Rumor had it that Absolute Beginning had once spent 9 eras of source energy to forge a supreme Tao foundation for Black Crow, allowing her to step into the boundless realm in one go. With the Absolute Beginning ruler trapped, the 9 tribes of Absolute Beginning were now under Black Crow's control. Whoosh! As soon as the black-clothed young woman appeared, a wisp of black flame floated in the air. A wisp of black-colored flames appeared, and it swept through the sky while dragging a tail behind it. It seemed like a wisp of light that tore apart the ages, and it caused this expanse of the heavens and the earth to change abruptly. A dark, cold, and murderous aura pervaded the air. Then, billions of flames surged out like stars and covered the world. Every wisp of flame was like a great world, and the world reflected a mysterious and obscure law of the great Tao. The billions of flames were like billions of great Tao that illuminated the world. All phenomena transform into the Tao, and the Tao grows endlessly, all fusing with the flames. Such attainments are truly remarkable. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. Chen Linkong's Tao Karma was fused with the Tao of the sword. Ape Ancestor's Tao Karma was fused with the Tao of Yin and Yang. And Black Crow's Tao Karma was fused with the Tao of fire. Both were extremely simple, yet they could derive endless mysteries of the great Tao. This was the convergence of the myriad of Taos, and only when one attained an inconceivable state on the boundless path towards the Tao could one attain such attainments in the Tao. Boom! The billions of flames trembled and followed a mysterious trajectory as they charged towards Lin Sun with overwhelming momentum. Lin Sun didn't dare to be negligent. He held his breath and concentrated as he fought with it. The mysterious God realm. In the dark world that seemed like chaos. On the branch, Black Crow suddenly exclaimed softly, and then with a bang, he transformed into a black-clothed young woman. Her snow-white hair fluttered down like a waterfall. She frowned, and her slender and white hands formed a strange seal. Immediately, strands of obscure and mysterious karma power surged out. Gradually, a blurry and illusory light screen appeared between her palms. On it, a fierce battle at the peak of Gale Mountain in Chi country of the mortal transformation world was displayed. But before the light screen could become clear, it suddenly collapsed and dissipated. The black-clothed young woman let out a muffled groan, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Her pair of enchanting red eyes instantly became cold and terrifying, and her aura showed signs of boiling. "Hey, little crow, you reap what you sow." Suddenly, a laugh sounded out from the depths of the ground. "In the ruins of Tao, you dare to pry into the changes with that little bit of cultivation of yours?" The black-clothed young woman lowered her head and said, "Sect leader, I just wanted to see how capable Lin Sun is now. Who would have thought this is the ruins of Tao? You're just looking for trouble by doing this. Not to mention you, even I can't forcefully deduce it. Otherwise, karma will be born, changes will occur, and killing tribulation will appear. A slight change will affect everything." Taichu's voice became gentle. "You just stay here and wait to see how many changes that variable can cause in the end." With me here, why do you need to worry about anything else? But Ape Ancestor and the 9 divisions of Taichu are here. If they, the black-clothed young woman couldn't help saying. But before she finished speaking, she was interrupted by Taichu. On the Great Way, everyone has his own way to go. Do you know why the 9 divisions of Destiny Tao can't set foot in this realm? It's because they can't cut off their reliance on me. To them, I am their shackles. They already possess their current level of cultivation, so if they can't even see through this, then they can forget about taking another step forward in this lifetime. Speaking of this, Taichu's voice became gentle again. As for Ape Ancestor, you don't have to worry about him. He has already set foot in this realm and has the qualification to play in the ruins of Tao. The black-clothed young woman nodded, but there was a doubt in her heart that she couldn't say. Why Ape Ancestor could act in the outside world, but only she had to stay here. She didn't dare to ask. Little Crow, tell me about this. How many cosmic Tao can Lin Sun defeat? Suddenly, Taichu asked. This, the black-clothed young woman pondered. Take your time. Don't worry. Taichu said softly. Time went by. After a long time, the black-clothed young woman said, Hierarch, for my selfishness, I naturally don't want Lin Sun to defeat any Dharma Laksana. After all, in this case, it proves that he is too dangerous. It's dangerous? Taichu's voice suddenly became subtle. No, it's far from enough. The black-clothed young woman was stunned. At this moment, her heart trembled, and her face suddenly changed. She said, He defeated your Dharma Laksana? Taichu Path. The black-clothed young woman nodded bitterly. Yes. When you were in the mortal realm, you were already a boundless Tao Lord, only a step away from the realm of perfection. Inferring from this, Lin Sun's current cultivation should also be in this realm. Taichu said, but this is not enough. Since he is an unprecedented variable, he should have a different power. Then wait and see. Don't let me down. Hearing these words, the black-clothed young woman was stunned. Why did Hierarch want Lin Sun to be stronger? Lin Sun won. It was not easy, but it was not dangerous either. Unlike defeating Chen Linkong and Ape Ancestor, it did not take Lin Sun too much time to defeat Heya. This was because as soon as the battle began, it entered the most intense game, and Lin Sun could not hold back. After fighting for nearly 2 hours, Lin Sun, who was seriously injured, defeated his opponent in one fell swoop. At this moment, carefully recalling the previous battle and comparing it with Chen Linkong and Ape Ancestor, Lin Sun gradually understood why these 3 supreme existences were on par with each other. The reason was that even though their paths towards the Tao were different, the attainments they possessed all those years ago had encountered similar bottlenecks in this realm. And this bottleneck was the key to entering the boundless Tao realm. It seems that their cultivation at that time should be within the scope of the boundless Tao Lord, and all of them are only a step away from entering the boundless Tao realm, Lin Sun thought. He even faintly felt that Master of the Heart Core, Golden Cicada, and the others were in the same realm when they first arrived in the mortal realm. Otherwise, it would be impossible for 5 people to be on par with each other. However, Lin Sun was very clear that he was different from them. At the very least, his current cultivation should be considered to be at the boundless Tao realm middle perfection, and he had not yet entered the late stage, let alone the boundless Tao realm perfection. In this heavenly cycle Tao law, only absolute beginning, Chun Shi, and that swordsman's Tao Karma Dharma are absent. Could it be that after they arrived in the absolute beginning realm, their cultivation had already stepped into the boundless Tao realm perfection, so their Tao Karma cannot be reflected in this heavenly cycle Tao law? Or perhaps there is a character among them who is like me, and even if they defeat the Tao Karma Dharma that is ranked first, they still can't attract the Chaos Tao fruit? Thinking of this, Lin Sun's heart surged with complicated emotions. Up until now, he had not attracted the Chaos Tao fruit. This made Lin Sun a little nervous. After all, Xia Ji had always been waiting in the disaster realm. But there was also an indescribable kind of anticipation. If he could defeat the Tao Karma Dharma that his master left behind in this world, it should be barely considered as the pupil surpasses the master, right? Tonight's update, tomorrow's. Chapter 3250. In a mountain field, Lin Sun was meditating with his legs crossed. His body was enshrouded in Taoist rhyme, making him look like a deity or an immortal. After defeating Black Crow's Dharma form of Tao, he chose to settle down and cultivate. He was in no hurry to challenge the Tao Karma left by his master, the master of the square inch and golden cicada, because Lin Sun noticed a problem. For example, when Chun Linkong, Ape Ancestor, and Black Crow were in the mortal transcendent realm, they had all reached the stage of myriad Daos converging into one leads to myriad Daos. But their cultivation still encountered a bottleneck at that time, unable to truly step into the level of grand completion boundless realm. Does this mean that the myriad of Daos converge into one and the myriad of Daos are merely something that the boundless Tao Lord can control? On the other hand, if one wanted to step into the realm of perfection and become the boundless dominator, then what sort of breakthrough should one attain on the path towards the Tao? All techniques converge into one, a single Tao develops a myriad of Daos. They're all fusing the Daos of the world into a furnace, and this furnace is my own path towards the Tao. However, the Daos that are formed from it are similarly the Daos of the world. While meditating, Lin Sun was lost in thought. There are so many Tao in the world. Tracing back to their origin, they are all born in the primordial chaos. How did the origin of chaos create so many great Daos? Wait a moment. Creation. Suddenly, Lin Sun was shocked. The origin of chaos could create the great Tao that didn't exist in the world. Why couldn't practitioners master this kind of power of creation? If he was really able to accomplish this, then wouldn't he be able to create something from nothing in the Grand Tao? All Daos converged into one, transforming into the great Daos that already existed in the world. One evolution myriad Daos, deducing the profound mysteries of the laws that had existed in this world for a long time. Anything that existed in the world could be refined and deduced. Can the world be created by oneself? It was like a thunderclap that tore through the chaos in Lin Sun's heart. At that instant, he seemed to have inadvertently torn apart the mist that covered his eyes, and he suddenly saw an inconceivably grand world. That world was filled with profundities that caused his heart to tremble, be excited, and even be perturbed. The creation of the great Tao, the creation of the power that does not exist in the world. This idea was really too bold. It seemed to touch the taboo of the ultimate mystery, which made Lin Sun excited and nervous. Is there really such a power of creation in this world? After a long time, Lin Sun calmed down a little bit. He began to deduce the eternal Tao. The path of the eternal Tao was divided into the exceeding law realm, the creation realm, and the boundless realm. As the name suggested, the so-called rule was the meaning of rules and regulations. Transcending the rules meant that after mastering and using the rules, one could transcend the rules of heaven and earth. This was the first level of the eternal Tao. The creation realm utilized the laws one grasped to possess the ability to create all things in the world, just like the Lord of creation. At this level, the more nomological powers one refined, the more powerful one's cultivation would be. This was the second level of the eternal Tao. If it was to create the great Tao that didn't exist in the world, it was undoubtedly similar to the profundities of the creation realm. But Lin Sun knew that there was an essential difference between the two. One was the creation of all things, the creation of all phenomena. One was to create a great Tao that had never existed in the world, just like the primordial chaos. Moreover, the power grasped by the creation realm came from the energy of the laws that one had refined. Only by refining more laws would one be able to realize the ability to create all things in the world. As for the great Tao of creation, it involved the secrets of the birth of the great Tao, and it involved the forbidden profundities of the quintessence of chaos. The two couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. The boundless realm was the final realm of the eternal Tao, and it was also the ultimate realm of the path of cultivation. Once one attained this realm, one could walk through numerous eras and realize great freedom and freedom in the true sense of the word. But even in the boundless realm, one absolutely couldn't be fearless and do as one pleased. Because outside the ruins of Tao, the precondition to survive the destruction of an era was to endure the blow of the great desolation tribulation. In other words, putting aside the competition between cultivators, the only force in the world that could threaten a boundless realm figure was the great desolation tribulation. But where exactly did this tribulation come from? No one knew. Even if it was a boundless realm figure in the world, no one had been able to unravel this mystery. As far as Lin Sun was concerned, if there was someone in the world who knew the answer, then it would definitely be the absolute beginning dominator. This person controlled the absolute beginning bell, and could borrow the energy of the great desolation tribulation, and he could even allow the mandate envoys under his command to borrow the energy of the great desolation tribulation. This could already be considered a forbidden method. But why did the great desolation tribulation exist? Why would this tribulation emerge during the change of an era? Why did this tribulation only target boundless realm figures? In the past, Lin Sun had thought of these questions as well, but he'd always been unable to find an answer. Yet now, when he realized the thought of creating a grand Tao like the Chaos Quintessence did, a bold thought arose in his mind. Could it be that the existence of the Great Desolation Tribulation was to prevent someone from trying to possess the energy to create a grand Tao like the Chaos Quintessence? When he thought up to here, Lin Sun went silent, and his heart was unable to calm down for a long time. I presume the Sovereign of Absolute Beginning is even clearer about the answer. Or perhaps Senior Chun Shi and that swordsman are probably aware of some clues. After all, figures like them have probably come to the ruins of Tao for the sake of this secret. Not to mention that according to rumor, the ruins of Tao contain the opportunity and fortune that can allow one to realize transcendence on the ultimate path towards the Tao. After a long while, Lin Sun finally sorted out some clues. Firstly, the path towards the Tao of all techniques converge into one was a force that only the boundless Tao Lord could grasp. For example, Chun Linkong, the ape ancestor, and Black Crow in the mortal transformation world all those years ago were at this realm. Secondly, if one wanted to break through the barrier of the boundless Tao Lord and step into the perfection stage of the boundless realm to become the boundless dominator, then one had to realize a further improvement on the path towards the Tao. In other words, one had to realize a breakthrough on the path towards the Tao of all techniques converge into one. Thirdly, if one wanted to prove whether the path of creating a grand Tao that had never existed in the world really existed, then perhaps one would be able to find the answer by seeking the Chaos Quintessence in the ruins of Tao. After all, the Chaos Tao fruit was the Chaos Quintessence that was born in the ruins of Tao. On the other hand, the Chaos Tao fruit was a complete innate rule energy. According to rumor, it was the opportunity that could allow a boundless realm expert to realize the ultimate path towards transcendence. Finally, the source of the Great Desolation Tribulation should be related to the secrets of the Chaos Quintessence in the ruins of Tao. Moreover, one should be able to find the answer in the ruins of Tao. After he straightened out all these clues, Lin Sun instantly felt as if he'd seen the sun after dispelling the clouds. He knew that so long as he continued searching along these clues, then perhaps he would be able to find out the ultimate secrets that were like taboos. And during this process of searching, his path towards the Tao would definitely undergo a transformation. The mountains and fields were boundless, and all was silent. Lin Sun sat on the ground and immersed himself in cultivation. Gradually, his aura changed, and a marvelous and extraordinary path towards the Tao emerged. It was like a starry sky was changing around him, and then a myriad of stars, numerous rivers of stars, and endless whirlpools of stars appeared. After that, a completely new path towards the Tao appeared. The world withered, the heavens collapsed, and everything turned into nothingness. Everything perished in destruction, and scenes of doomsday appeared. Later on, boundless Buddhist lands were born. Wonderful lotuses floated in all directions, the chanting of Sanskrit surged like a tide, and boundless light appeared everywhere. It was a state of extreme happiness of the great Tao. In the end, the 9 clear heavens were condensed, and it displayed the image of Ching Su, the scene of Tai Chong, and the interest of all changes in nature. These supreme paths of the Tao were respectively taken by the 4 patriarchs of the ancestral courts, Yuanchu, Tianwu, Shi, and Xuyin. Now, all of them were developed by Lin Sun with the power of nirvana, and they revealed their profundities. Time flew by. A month had passed in a flash. On this day, Lin Sun's momentum suddenly changed, and a stream of clear and turbid air emerged. It intertwined and cycled, turning into yin and yang, and formed a tai chi. That momentum was actually the power of the Tao belonging to Ape Ancestor. But in less than an hour, the power derived from Lin Sun's body suddenly stagnated, and then suddenly collapsed and disappeared. At the same time, Lin Sun groaned and woke up from deep meditation. The mystery of the Tao can't be deduced by me. It seems that my own cultivation is not enough, otherwise it won't be like this. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. It was one thing to defeat the Tao karma left by Ape Ancestor, but it was extremely difficult to derive the mystery of Ape Ancestor's Tao one by one. At the bottom of it all, it was because the Tao karma left behind by the Ape Ancestor all those years ago was already at the level of the immeasurable Tao Lord. All Taos converged into one, and it was extremely difficult for others to see through its quintessence profundities. With Lin Sun's current cultivation, it was difficult for him to derive all the mysteries of the Tao. Well, let's go and see the power of Senior Golden Cicada's Tao Karma. Lin Sun stood up and left the mountains. Yonggwa. Maple Fairy. The fiery red maple forest was rooted at the bank of a large river, and numerous red leaves floated down onto the surface of the river, seeming as if numerous blazing flames were rippling in the river. Over Maple Fairy there was an auspicious cloud, and a golden cicada was lying on it, looking up at the sky. Standing over the fiery maple forest, Lin Sun's moon-white clothes were fluttering in the river wind, making him look like an otherworldly immortal. Golden Cicada was looking at the sky, and Lin Sun was looking at Golden Cicada. In the vicinity of Maple Leaf Fairy, there were many ordinary people hurrying on their way, waiting for the ships to dock. Further away, there were many figures of Almighties. Every powerful figure stood very far away. When they looked at Lin Sun, there was awe lingering on their faces. 3 of the 5 Tao Karma that ranked first among the Tao laws of heaven had been defeated by Lin Sun. Now, Lin Sun was about to compete with Golden Cicada's Tao Karma. Suddenly, a fiery red maple leaf rose with the wind and fell into the green river. Lin Sun also moved at this moment. He cupped his hands and said softly, "Senior, please enlighten me." Under the sky, above the auspicious cloud, a cicada suddenly sounded. At first, it was so subtle that it could not be heard. Then it resounded through the clouds, the earth, and the mountains and rivers in the world. The hearts of the great powers that had been hiding extremely far away since a long time ago shook fiercely, and they seemed to see a cicada flapping its wings as it flew over from the eternal river of time that was changing eras. Chapter 32:51. Over the Maple Leaf Fairy, cicadas chirped loudly. The hearts of the distant spectators roiled while they revealed dazed expressions, and their thoughts were impacted. It was as if they'd fallen into a strange and dazzling dream. The dream was so real that they seemed to have returned to the beginning of their pursuit of Tao. Scenes of joys and sorrows, as well as endless bitterness. Lin Sun's state of mind was also rippling, but he soon calmed down. When he looked again, A barefooted, handsome young man in linen was already standing under the auspicious clouds. His eyes were gentle and clear, without any momentum at all. Suddenly, he smiled, stretched out a finger and drew in the void. Boom! Heaven and earth split and everything changed suddenly. Lin Sun suddenly found that he appeared on a broken road. One step forward was the abyss, and one step backward was endless darkness. Apart from this, there was nothing else. As for his own cultivation, it was as if all of his cultivation had disappeared. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. The abyss and the darkness, one virtual and one real, life and death. Which is virtual and which is real? It's up to you to choose. A gentle and calm voice sounded. Lin Sun was silent. The coexistence of illusion and reality, the coexistence of life and death. Is this the path of Tao that Senior Golden Cicada has mastered? He looked up at the abyss, which was so deep that it seemed to swallow people's souls. Looking back, the darkness was like fog, which was so mysterious that it made people's hearts palpitate. Crack! Crack! The broken road under his feet suddenly cracked, spreading like a spider web. If it went on like this, the broken road would collapse completely. At that time, he would fall into the abyss. The black fog behind him was also wriggling, pressing forward little by little. He was in a dilemma. The most terrible thing was that Lin Sun couldn't use his cultivation. It seemed that he could only choose to step into the abyss on the road ahead or be swallowed by the black fog on the road behind him. Among them, there were virtual and real life and death. The situation was extremely dangerous. If it were others, they would think that only by seeing through the abyss and the black fog, which was real and which was fake, could they resolve the danger. They would even think that this was an invisible contest of Tao. If they couldn't see through the virtual and real, they would lose. For a moment, Lin Sun almost thought so. But just as he was about to make a decision, he abruptly stopped this impulse. After his expression changed, he suddenly laughed. The abyss and the black mist, the illusory and the real, life and death, all of these were obstacles to one's heart. Once one fell into a trap, no matter what choice one made, it would all lead to a loss. It was like a cow being led by the nose. It should struggle to break free, so how could it follow the other party? As for his cultivation, he could not sense it at all. This was the real illusion. Bang! The broken path under his feet suddenly broke, and the black fog behind him had already enveloped him. Lin Sun shouted in his heart, "Open!" Boom! All phenomena changed, and the black fog and the abyss disappeared like bubbles. When Lin's vision recovered, a finger was already close to him like the silent sword Qi. This finger came from the golden cicada. But at this critical moment, it was blocked by Lin Sun's palm. Bang! The finger force and palm force collided, producing an earth-shattering rumble. A rain of light splashed everywhere. Lin couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. If he had been a little slower to wake up before, he would have been killed in this battle. Thinking about the scene just now, it was really terrible. Unconsciously, he had fallen into the illusion of mind, which was the so-called appearance, so that he fell into the killing tribulation of the abyss and the black mist. Was all this an illusion? Yes and no. Because whether it was an illusion or a reality, it was a killing tribulation. And this killing tribulation came with the finger of the golden cicada. In other words, it was the power of the great way contained in the finger force of the golden cicada that affected Lin's state of mind silently before. It could be imagined how terrifying the Tao of the golden cicada was. Illusory and real coexisted, and life and death turned the killing tribulation between existence and non-existence. In the splashing of the light rain, the figure of the golden cicada also dissipated like bubbles and could not be found anymore. In front of the ferry, many ordinary people were still waiting, and those powerful figures in the distance were still in a trance. Under the sky, above the auspicious cloud, except for a missing golden cicada, everything seemed to be the same as before. But Lin was keenly aware that something was wrong. The Tao of the golden cicada was not defeated, but it seemed to disappear from this world, and no trace of it could be sensed. The formless is invisible. The present is real, and the golden cicada is illusory. Lin raised his eyebrows. This was not the method of breath concealment and invisibility, but a supreme means of the Great Way. Not to mention the naked eye, even the divine awareness couldn't sense it. Time passed little by little, but the golden cicada never appeared. But Lin's expression became more and more serious. The enemy was in the dark while he was in the light. There would undoubtedly be too many variables in such a battle. The golden cicada was illusory, as if it had turned into the nothingness of the Great Way. In contrast, he who was exposed to the world was existence. Nothing against existence, emptiness against reality, darkness against light. It was the first time that Lin had encountered such a battle, and the invisible pressure was undoubtedly the most terrible. Suddenly, Lin took a deep breath, closed his eyes, restrained the spreading divine awareness, and stood there silently. His state of mind was as clear and ethereal as an ancient well, without any ripples. His heart was like an ancient well, but it could reflect the shadow of the empty moon. Then, in Lin's state of mind, a figure appeared, standing on his side, with 5 fingers folded into a seal and held in the air. But it seemed that the figure didn't know where to start, so he stayed there for a long time. This figure was none other than the golden cicada. It turns out that he has been by my side all the time, waiting for the slightest flaw in my state of mind and chi, and then he would take the opportunity to raise his fist. Lin's state of mind rippled. He was surprised and suddenly realized, and his back was covered with cold sweat. This kind of formless way of illusory and real was undoubtedly too incredible. Boom! At the moment when Lin's state of mind rippled, the raised fist of the golden cicada had already smashed towards him like a long-awaited thunderbolt. But Lin had already captured his figure. How could he not react? Almost at the first time, he also raised his fist and punched. Boom! The collision of the two shocked the universe. It also awakened the group of powerful figures in the distance, who were in a trance as if falling into a dream. They screamed one by one and looked at each other in horror. For existences like them, the ordinary Tao of illusion was unable to shake their minds since a long time ago. However, the golden cicada's Tao karma actually shook their minds with a single cicada cry, and it made them feel as if they'd fallen into a nightmare. Just what kind of terrifying cultivation did he have to be able to do this? In the distance, the battle was taking place. Gradually, it attracted the attention of those powerful figures. However, to their horror, this battle seemed to be extremely strange. The figure of golden cicada would disappear without a trace every time, but Lin Sun's eyes were closed, and even his spiritual awareness was withdrawn. But every time, golden cicada would disappear. But every time, he seemed to be able to catch the trace of the golden cicada and force the golden cicada to show up again and again. Everyone was flabbergasted by what they were seeing. For a long time, boom, after the figure of the golden cicada was forced to show up again, it suddenly shook its head with a smile and disappeared completely. Lin opened his eyes and bowed to the void. "Senior, thank you for letting me win." He won just like that? Many of the powerful figures were stunned. There were also people who were trembling in their hearts. Such a battle didn't seem very exciting, but the invisible murderous intent that pervaded the air could be said to be everywhere. If it were them, they probably wouldn't be able to find the golden cicada's trace at all. If that was the case, how could there be a battle? But Lin Sun won. Lin Sun had indeed won. The heavenly cycle Tao law had lost another Tao law power. This was clearly noticed by the powerful figures present through the Tao Karma Jade archive. However, the Chaos Tao fruit that belonged to Lin Sun still hadn't appeared. This made people feel even more shocked and puzzled. It's already come to this, so how can it still be like this? If the Chaos Tao fruit still didn't appear when the Master of the Core Realm defeated the Tao Karma left by the Master of the Core Realm, wouldn't it mean that Lin Sun wouldn't be able to leave the mortal transformation? Hidden World, Profound God Domain. Golden Cicada, who was playing chess, had just picked up a chess piece when he suddenly stopped, and then a strange look appeared on his face. You can't make a move. Are you going to admit defeat? The Master of the Core Realm asked with a smile. Golden Cicada slowly returned the chess piece in his hand, and then he chuckled. I'm willing to admit defeat in this game. I didn't expect little friend Lin's state of mind to have reached such a level. Even my Tao of void and reality can't make things difficult for him. His words were filled with gratification. The Master of the Core Realm came to a sudden realization. It has only been 7 months since he entered the mortal transformation, and he has already defeated the Tao Karma Dharma you left behind? He knew how profound Golden Cicada's Tao path was. It could be said that it was one of the most difficult Tao paths in the ruins of Tao. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun was able to defeat the Tao Karma Dharma left behind by Golden Cicada. It had to be said that this surprised the Master of the Core Realm. Golden Cicada laughed heartily. Fellow Taoist, there's a hint of complacency in your words. It seems that you're very happy in your heart. The Master of the Core Realm couldn't help but smile. He thought for a moment and said, In the future, I'm afraid I won't dare to be his teacher. But the more it is like this, the more gratified I am. I can't wait for my disciples to surpass me. Golden Cicada pondered and said, Fellow Taoist, I can understand your feelings. Now I'm a little worried about little friend Lin. Are you worried that his performance as a variable is too eye-catching and will provoke an unexpected calamity? Exactly. There's no need to worry. Tai Chu hasn't made a move yet. As long as he doesn't move, there's nothing to worry about. I hope so. Speaking of this, Golden Cicada suddenly said, Next, little friend Lin will definitely challenge the Tao Karma Dharma you left behind. It will be difficult for him. The Master of the Core Realm said casually, The Tao Karma I left behind is impossible for others to win. But for Lin Sun, it is very easy for him to win. There's something special about it? Golden Cicada was surprised. The Master of the Core Realm couldn't help but laugh. As a teacher, will I make things difficult for my disciple? As for the special, when you see him in the future, you can ask him. Golden Cicada was startled. He said thoughtfully, Then I'll really wait and see. There are more updates at night. Chapter 3252. Maple Leaf Fairy. When the powerful figures recovered from their shock, they realized that Lin Sun had already left. Does everyone still remember how the absolute beginning ruler left the mortal transcendent realm? Suddenly, someone spoke. Rumor has it that when the absolute beginning ruler arrived in the mortal transformation, there were only a few dozen types of karma in the heavenly cycle Tao law. The absolute beginning ruler fought against them one by one and won them all with ease. At that time, the Tao fruit of chaos didn't appear either. As a result, the absolute beginning ruler was trapped in the mortal transformation for 100 years. Later, it was said that the absolute beginning ruler comprehended the ultimate secret of the heavenly cycle Tao law. With one step, the heavenly gate opened and he left the mortal transformation. Someone said, That's just a legend. No one knows if it's true. Don't forget that the absolute beginning ruler's Tao manifestation wasn't included in the heavenly cycle Tao law. If he didn't comprehend the ultimate secret of the heavenly cycle Tao law, how could he have done that? There's no need to argue over this. Don't you think that Lin Sun's current situation is similar to the absolute beginning ruler's? The surroundings instantly became much quieter, and many people's expressions changed indeterminately. Comparing Lin Sun to the absolute beginning ruler? Since ancient times until now, the absolute beginning sovereign has been viewed as one of the first batch of existences to step into the great circle of the boundless realm. It's already been countless eras since he's proven his Tao, and there's practically no one in the ruins of Tao that can compare to him. That's not necessarily true. For example, didn't that swordsman use his own Tao to form sword chains to bind the absolute beginning ruler until now? Everyone, Lin Sun naturally can't compare to the absolute beginning ruler now. But now, Lin Sun already has a foundation comparable to that of the primordial dominator. As soon as these words came out, the entire hall quieted down again. Indeed, Lin Sun's current foundation and accomplishments were enough to compare to the absolute beginning ruler in the mortal transformation. This was an indisputable fact that no one could refute. After a long time, someone said softly, "Let's see who's stronger between Lin Sun and his master, the master of the heart dimension. If Lin Sun wins and the Tao fruit of chaos doesn't appear, then Lin Sun will be in the same situation as the absolute beginning ruler. Similarly, if Lin Sun loses, there's no point in talking about it. Between heaven and earth, Lin Sun rode the wind and walked among the boundless mountains and rivers. After the battle with the golden cicada, a feeling of comprehension that couldn't be restrained suddenly arose in his heart. It was as if he'd broken through a layer of barrier, causing his entire body to have a change of overflowing when the cup is full. This made Lin Sun realize that his cultivation broke through again. It should be on the Tao path of stepping into the late-stage boundless realm from middle-stage grand completion boundless realm in one stroke. At this moment, he strolled through the heavens and the earth without restraint, and he experienced the various changes in his cultivation, causing him to feel an indescribable feeling of delight and carefree. It just happened to be like a torrent that surged out from a breached dam, and it also seemed like a timely rain that crashed down from the 9 heavens. The transformation in one's cultivation was simply the greatest enjoyment on the path of cultivation. Day after day, Lin Sun's figure never stopped. He stepped on mountains and rivers, skimmed over the endless rivers and mountains, and witnessed all the things in the world. Half a month later, Lin Sun suddenly stopped. In the distance, there appeared a magnificent blue sea between heaven and earth. Above the blue sea, seagulls gathered, and schools of fish occasionally leaped out of the sea, creating waves. In the sky above one of the sea regions, there was a stone tablet floating. The stone tablet was engraved with the pattern of a slanting moon and 3 stars. When Lin Sun arrived, there were already innumerable powerful figures gathered around the blue sea. It was as if all the powerful figures in the mortal transformation realm had come together, and their figures could be seen everywhere. This battle had undoubtedly attracted the attention of the world. After all, Lin Sun had been fighting for 9 months, and he had won every battle. Right now, on the heavenly cycle Tao law, there was only a karmic Tao characteristic that he could face. Moreover, this karmic Tao characteristic was closely related to Lin Sun. If Lin Sun were to lose, all his previous victories would be for naught. But if he were to win, to the entire mortal transformation realm, it would be no less than an event that would be passed down through the ages. Lin Sun also noticed this scene. He even caught sight of the figures of traversing Sword Gorge, Fu Nanli, and other old friends. After nodding to them from afar, Lin Sun headed straight for the stone tablet above the rippling blue sea. Along the way, he attracted the attention of countless people. The slanting moon and 3 stars are the heart, and so is the heart. Master, I've long known that the foundation of our Fangsuan mountain is the state of mind. Stopping before the stone tablet, Lin Sun murmured in his heart, and you once told my senior brothers and sisters that a disciple need not be inferior to a master. Today I've come to ask for some guidance from the karmic Tao characteristic you left behind. He cupped his hands from afar and bowed. The stone tablet buzzed and turned into a tall and thin figure that seemed to sit high above the 9 heavens. His hair was snow-white, and he had the air of a sage, the charm of a Confucian, and the aura of a demon. However, he was neither a Taoist nor a Confucian, nor a Buddhist nor a demon. His aura was extremely profound and indescribable. This figure was naturally the karmic Tao characteristic left behind by the master of the Fangtsuan mountain. When it appeared, all the powerful figures in the nearby territories sensed it. It was as if they had seen the master of all Taos, the Lord of the heavens, and they felt a sense of reverence and respect from the bottom of their hearts. It was a shapeless, imposing aura that caused others to be unable to arouse any thoughts of disrespect, or go against it. Lin Sun sensed this imposing aura that assaulted his face as well. Even if Lin Sun had seen the karmic Tao characteristic left behind by his master, the master of the heart, on more than one occasion a very long time ago, it was like the difference between the clouds and the mud when compared to the karmic Tao characteristic that stood before him. Suddenly, the master of the heart attacked, and he casually slapped his palm forward. Bang! When this palm appeared, all the spectating great figures in the surroundings felt as if their mental states had been heavily injured. In their daze, they felt as if they'd transformed into tiny ants, and that enormous palm blotted out the sky as it smashed down towards them. All of them only had a single thought in their minds: this palm is like the boundless heaven Tao that's pressing down, and it's utterly impossible to resist. A strand of indescribable despair started to grow madly in their hearts. Right when they were on the verge of being unable to hold on any longer, a clear and indifferent voice of the Tao suddenly resounded. Ha! Bang! All of those great figures felt their vision go black, and their mental states that were on the verge of being unable to hold on suddenly struggled free from their despair and helplessness. Even so, they still suffered from the backlash. Many of their faces paled, and they staggered, almost falling from the void. All of them could not help but be overwhelmed with shock. What a terrifying palm force! It directly affected their mental state. Even if they were watching from afar, these boundless realm existences could not withstand it. If it were to directly attack them, the consequences would be unimaginable. When they looked into the distance again, Lin Sun was already engaged in battle with the Master of the Heart. The Master of the Heart's combat technique was unusually simple. He kept swinging his palm and slapping it down again and again. His movements were light and casual, and there was no trace of the great Tao to speak of. But every time he slapped his palm, it directly impacted the minds of the spectators. It was inconceivable. The state of mind was an extremely mysterious and ethereal power, but at this moment, it could not escape the bombardment of the Master of the Heart's palm force. Some spectators coughed up blood, turned around, and left, not daring to take another look. The other spectators also felt extremely uncomfortable. They were only watching from afar, but they were still affected by the shockwaves. Their minds felt as if they were constantly being bombarded by a heavy hammer. Gradually, more and more spectators chose to leave. Some tried to forcefully hold on, but in just a few breaths of time, they coughed up blood and screamed loudly. Their minds were on the verge of collapse, and they did not dare stay any longer and retreated in panic. In merely a short moment, there was actually not a single spectator left on the blue sea. Boom! 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 Lin Sun felt like his mind was like a cauldron. As the Master of the Heart's palm force slashed down, the walls of the cauldron rumbled and trembled violently, and he felt as if his mind was on the verge of collapse. This was an extremely mysterious blow to the state of mind, and it was completely different from the other great Taos. In the beginning, Lin Sun was still able to resist. But gradually, he was only able to protect himself. I never expected Lin Sun to have grasped the power of the state of mind to such an inconceivable extent. With his level of attainment, how could he only be ranked first in the heavenly cycle Tao laws? The pressure on Lin Sun multiplied, and he was extremely puzzled. Golden Cicada's formless Tao of void and reality was already mysterious and unique enough. Who would have thought that his master's state of mind was even more tyrannical? In comparison, the Tao karmas left behind by Ancestor Ape, Black Crow, and Chen Linkong were obviously easier to resist. Boom! The blows on the cauldron of the state of mind became more and more ferocious, and Lin soon dared not to let his imagination run wild. He abandoned all distracting thoughts, concentrated all his energy in the place of the state of mind, and ran all his attainments. At the same time, Lin soon subconsciously ran the fighting saint method of the 9 great inheritances of the heart of mind. It was also at this moment that something unbelievable happened. The cauldron-like state of mind seemed to be on fire, and suddenly surged with unparalleled fighting intent, which made the state of mind become stable. When the palm force of the master of the heart of mind hit the cauldron, although it still made the cauldron of the state of mind suffer a terrible impact, it was not so difficult to bear. This made Lin soon feel refreshed. Sure enough, the 9 great inheritances of the heart of mind were created by his master, and he had already integrated the 9 scriptures into his body a long time ago. It was just that he had never encountered a battle of the state of mind before, so he suffered a sudden impact. Thinking of this, Lin soon ran other inheritances at the same time, such as the Primeval Heart Sutra, the Floating Sutra, the Close Distance Sutra, the Unfettered Sutra, the Carefree Travel Sutra, the Unbounded Voyager, the Knowledge Sutra, and the Confinement of the Heart of Mind. Each inheritance included all kinds of phenomena, but traced back to the source, they were all inextricably linked to the power of the state of mind. At this moment, as Lin soon ran the inheritance, his state of mind also showed various wonderful visions. Not only was it completely stabilized, but it also gave birth to many insights that it had never experienced before. The most amazing thing was that when the palm force of the master of the heart of mind hit him again, Lin soon not only didn't feel any impact, but also produced a strange rhythm-like resonance. It was like the state of mind was a piece of stubborn iron, which was being hammered again and again to remove the impurities. This, could it be a good fortune left by my master? At this moment, a thought came to Lin soon's mind uncontrollably. Here are the updates. There were 2 things I wanted to say. First, I would definitely finish the book this month if there were no accident. I have a lot of things I want to say, but after thinking about it, I think it's more important to do my best to finish the book. I'll write some random thoughts and feelings on my WeChat account when I have the time. Second, beginning of the month. Goldfish, please vote for a guaranteed monthly ticket. Thank you. Chapter 3253. Above the blue sea, Lin soon's tall figure was enshrouded in the dazzling light, and he stood still. But a wonderful change was taking place in his state of mind. His state of mind was like a furnace. As he circulated the 9 inheritances of the core world, the attack from the owner of the core world transformed into a miraculous tempering force, causing his state of mind to seem like a sword that had been tempered thousands of times, and it started to emit a peerlessly fierce light bit by bit. Along with the ceaseless tempering of his state of mind, in the end, a wisp of sharpness in his state of mind seemed to have broken through an invisible shackle, and along with the profundities of the scripture of the core world, an incredible aura surged out. Sometimes it swayed above the universe and galloped between all phenomena. That was the ultimate profundity recorded in the floating game scripture. The light of mind is like a shuttle, and it floats through all phenomena. Sometimes it walked freely in the mortal world and transcended the ups and downs of the world. This was the profundity of the wandering game scripture. When one's state of mind reached this point, one could ride on the righteousness of the heavens and the earth, resist the discrimination of the 6 chi, and roam boundlessly. Sometimes it saw through the mysteries of the world and discerned the essence of all Taoist. Sometimes it transformed into mountains, rivers, plants, trees, the sun, the moon, the stars, the living beings in the world, and experienced different vitality of life. This was the freedom transformation scripture, and it could transform all phenomena of the world, all things in the world, and the changes of the ages. Sometimes, in the end, the wisp of sharpness that was born in the state of mind seemed to have broken through the barriers of the ages and traveled through the changes of the ages. It was unrestrained, and without any worries. It was a true feeling of great freedom and freedom. It seemed as if a single thought could reach through the ages and see through all the mysteries of the world since ancient times. After an unknown period of time, Lin Sun opened his eyes quietly. When he looked at the owner of the core world in the distance, its figure was gradually dissipating. "Thank you, Master, for helping me break through the barrier of my heart." Lin Sun bowed. This state of mind could travel through the ages, and this state of mind could reach through the ages. This was the Tao of the core world. After experiencing this battle, Lin Sun's state of mind seemed as if it had completely broken through a threshold, and he had completely realized great freedom in the boundless realm. The wonderful transformation that came from the state of mind caused Lin Sun's aura to undergo an inconceivable change. Although he was standing in the void, he seemed as if he was standing above the boundless ages. However, upon closer inspection, he seemed to be everything in this world, natural and omnipresent. It could be a tiny speck of dust, or it could be a beautiful palace in the sky, or it could be a speck of dust that could suppress the ages. Far away from the Jade Sea, the mighty cultivators who had avoided the battle earlier sensed the disappearance of the Master of the Heart's Tao aura from the Tao Karma Jade archive. This change caused all of them to be shocked. There was no doubt that Lin Sun had won this battle of the Tao. As a disciple, he defeated the Tao Karma left behind by his master all those years ago. This is truly shocking. Some mighty figures sighed with emotion. Before they came to the ruins of Tao, each of them had their own successors, and most of them were even the founders of their own sections. But very few of them could possess such an unworldly cultivation path like Lin Sun. The Master of the Heart's strength was extraordinarily profound and terrifying. Every single move he made struck directly at one's state of mind, and it was utterly impossible to guard against or avoid. Could be said to be the most mysterious and supreme Grand Tao in the world. But even then, Lin Sun still defeated him. Does this mean that Lin Sun's state of mind is already formidable to an inconceivable extent? It must be so. Wait, the chaotic Tao fruit that belongs to Lin Sun still hasn't appeared. This isn't as simple as defeating the Master of the Heart's Tao Karma Jade images. After this battle, Lin Sun can already compare to the primordial dominator from all those years ago. The surroundings were stirred, and all the mighty figures were unable to maintain their composure. Those 5 Tao Karma Jade images that were comparable to the first in the universe had been defeated by Lin Sun one by one, but the chaotic Tao fruit still hadn't appeared. This was undoubtedly inconceivable. According to rumor, the primordial dominator was trapped here for 100 years, and then he saw through the profundities of the universe and opened the heaven door with a single step. Will Lin soon be able to accomplish such a miracle? Someone spoke softly. Everyone looked at each other, and then they couldn't help but move towards the blue sea. When they arrived, they couldn't help but look up subconsciously. They saw Lin Sun's figure rising high up in the sky, as if he was about to break through the sky. What is he doing? Everyone was puzzled. Hidden world, profound God territory. The Master of the Heart suddenly waved his sleeve, and the chessboard in front of him tipped over, and the chess pieces fell like rain. Then, he stood up, and his entire body seemed to relax. He smiled. The game is over. Next, we'll wait for the final battle. Golden Cicada was stunned at first, and then he smiled and stood up. It seems that young friend Lin already has the foundation to break the game. It's still early, but as you said, the foundation is already there. Just like the primordial dominator, Chun Linkong, and that swordsman. The Master of the Heart's eyes were deep and profound. Golden Cicada thought for a moment and then said, "All right. Primordial spirit world." A burst of hearty laughter suddenly came from the thatched hut. What a good Master of the Heart Mountain. He actually left behind a wonderful move in the Tao Karma aspect. Not far from the thatched hut, Chun Linkong, who was sitting on the ground, shuddered. "Grandfather, what do you mean? A long time ago, weren't you curious about why the Master of the Heart Mountain only left behind a Tao Karma aspect in the mortal transcendent realm, the number one Tao law of the universe? The voice from the thatched hut said. Qin Linkong nodded. Yes, in my opinion, the Master of the Heart Mountain's Tao Karma is already above the Tao law of the universe. At first, I also thought that he was hiding his strength, but now I know that he did it to fulfill his little disciple's wish. The voice within the thatched cottage sighed with emotion. As a master, he was actually willing to give up an even greater chaotic Tao fruit in order to complete his disciple's path of cultivation. Even I have no choice but to sigh with admiration at such courage. So, like grandfather, the Master of the Heart Mountain was able to cross the Tao law of the universe and absorb the essence of chaos in the mortal transcendent realm. Chen Linkong couldn't help but show a touch of surprise. If so, he paid a great price. Without his sacrifice, how could he wait for Lin Sun's transformation today? This is a wonderful move. It's really amazing. Grandfather, in this case, what kind of Tao fruit of chaos will Lin Sun have? It's impossible to estimate. Hearing such a reply, Chen Linkong was completely stunned. Could it be greater than the Tao fruit of chaos obtained by grandfather? In that chaotic world, the girl in black suddenly felt her heart palpitate, and then a violent sound of chains colliding suddenly resounded between heaven and earth. The hierarch, ha ha ha, Bodhi, you are really generous. The laughter of the absolute beginning sovereign sounded from the depths of the earth, and the sound of chains colliding naturally spread from him. After a long while, the laughter gradually subsided. The primordium sovereign sighed. Things are getting more and more interesting. I thought that you, Subhuti, wanted to use your disciple as a variable to fight with me. Who would have thought that you'd give up long ago? But that's even better. I can't be happier with this variable. The girl in black trembled. She could feel that the hierarch's chi fluctuated greatly, and the invisible power made her feel suffocated. But she couldn't tell whether the hierarch was happy or angry, or both. At this time, Lin Sun was already standing at the highest point of the sky. In Chen Shi's field of vision, this was an expanse of nothingness that seemed like chaos. It was boundless and completely empty. Even his divine senses couldn't sense anything. But in Lin Sun's mind, scenes appeared one after another. A tall swordsman stood in the light and shadow of reincarnation with his sleeves fluttering like a supreme god. A boundless sea of swords appeared in front of him. The sea of swords surged, and countless torrents of sword intent gushed into the depths of the light and shadow of reincarnation behind him. At another place, a man in green clothes that seemed like jade and carried an ancient sword on his back walked above the river of chaos like an overlord. Every single step he took caused a profound and unfathomable divine talisman diagram to appear beneath his feet. Further away, there was a man in a black robe who was neatly dressed, and his body was sprinkled with crystal-clear divine chains of calamity. There were so many of them that they were as numerous as the grains of sand in the Ganges River. But he himself was invulnerable to all calamities and was transcendent. Three figures reflected three kinds of supreme demeanors. When Lin Sun sensed all this, he couldn't help but feel ripples in his mind. He had realized that these were three existences above the Tao of Zhou. The reason why they didn't leave their names in the Tao of Zhou was that the Tao of Zhou couldn't bear their karma at all. Yet now, he, Lin Sun, had become the fourth cultivator in history to surpass the Tao of Zhou. When he realized this, an indescribable feeling of warmth suddenly surged in Lin Sun's heart. He knew that it was his master who had helped him achieve this. If it wasn't for his master's karma that tempered his state of mind to the point of being able to see through the ages, it would be absolutely impossible for him to possess such a path in the Tao in such a short period of time. After a short while, Lin Sun took a deep breath and discarded all distracting thoughts. Rise! In the next moment, his figure emanated boundless light like the rising sun, and it illuminated the boundless chaotic sky. Bang! The entire mortal transformation shook abruptly. The almighty figures that were distributed in various areas of the world seemed to have sensed something, and they looked up into the sky in unison. They saw a wisp of mysterious light appear in the sky that covered the Tao of Zhou, and it was like a dominator that surpassed the Tao of Zhou and emitted supreme might. Countless people were dumbstruck. Another path of the Tao that surpasses the laws of the universe has appeared in this world. It's Lin Sun. It must be him. This scene was like the sudden appearance of a storm, and it wreaked havoc in the hearts of all the almighty figures. They couldn't help but be in a trance. It had only been 10 months since Lin Sun entered the mortal transformation, but he had already created an unparalleled miracle in the struggle for the Tao. And at this moment they were all witnessing all of this. Chapter 32:54. In the sky. Along with Lin Sun releasing the limits of his cultivation, a mysterious quintessence energy surged into appearance, and it was like a dazzling rain of light that bathed Lin Sun's figure within it. Immediately, Lin Sun felt that it was the fruit of chaos. The so-called chaotic Tao fruit was born from a strand of the innate laws of chaos in the ruins of Tao, and it was indescribably profound. The more they refined, the more powerful their cultivation in the boundless realm, and the more hope they had to realize the ultimate transcendence in this realm. However, Lin Sun soon noticed that his chaos Tao fruit was a little different, because the chaotic Tao fruit didn't contain the laws of chaos, and it was a strand of the quintessence energy of chaos that truly belonged to the ruins of Tao. Why was the primal chaos Tao fruit called a Tao fruit? The reason was that these natural laws were born from the quintessence of chaos, and they were like fruits that had been born from it. But now what Lin Sun absorbed was not the fruit, but the source of the fruit. When he realized this, it was simply earth-shattering and made Lin's state of mind shocked. The quintessence of chaos in the ruins of Tao is capable of giving birth to a chaotic Tao fruit, and it's no different from creating a grand Tao. Now that I'm able to refine and absorb such a quintessence of chaos, doesn't it mean that so long as I refine and absorb its profundities, I'll be able to create a chaotic Tao fruit like this? Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't stay calm. Not long ago, he'd once pondered about the path of creating a Tao that had never existed in the world, and he felt that he only had to seek the quintessence energy of the ruins of Tao before he might be able to find the answer and verify if such a path of the Tao could work. And now, the origin energy of chaos that he had attracted might very well prove this point. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun calmed down. He sat down cross-legged and started to meditate and comprehend the quintessence energy of chaos that surged ceaselessly into his body. Gradually, numerous indescribably profound comprehensions surged into his heart. These insights were all related to the origin of the rule of chaos, which was extremely obscure. With Lin Sun's current understanding, although he could understand them, it was difficult for him to digest them in a short time. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. The origin of chaos was completely refined by Lin Sun. When Lin Sun woke up from meditation, his cultivation had been transformed by leaps and bounds. His path towards the Tao had the profundities of rebirth as its core, and he'd fused a myriad of Taos into a single furnace. He'd long since realized the might of the myriad of Taos converging into one and developing a myriad of Taos. Yet now, as he refined and absorbed this strand of chaotic quintessence, it allowed his rebirth profundities to undergo a completely new transformation, and the transformation of the rebirth profundities caused his path towards the Tao to undergo a transformation as well. Even Lin Sun himself did not expect that after experiencing so many great Tao struggles in the mortal world, he would eventually attract such a great opportunity. Compared to before, he clearly sensed that even though his cultivation was only at the late-stage boundless realm, the path of the Tao he possessed already possessed a reserve that surpassed the level of the boundless Tao Lord. One must know that the immeasurable Tao Lord was already an existence that was closest to the grand completion of the boundless realm, yet the current Lin Sun was able to obtain such a foundation. It could be imagined how great the change this fortuitous encounter brought him was. Moreover, at this time, Lin Sun finally dared to conclude that the power of Tao creation existed, and it was contained in the original power of the ruins of wonderful Tao. The beginning, Qin Shi and that swordsman had probably already seen through this back then. And with my current cultivation, if I were to meet any of them, I'm afraid that I would not be qualified to compete at all. But there's no need to be anxious. However, there's no rush. This is just the mortal transcendent realm. There will be plenty of opportunities to obtain more origin energy of chaos. Lin Sun pondered for a moment, then stood up and swept his gaze across the world. Immediately, the scenes of every place in the mortal world appeared in his mind. After refining the chaotic quintessence, Lin Sun was naturally like an incarnation of the mortal world. He could easily sense every movement in this world. Seniors, I'll take my leave first. When we meet again in the future, I'll definitely invite all of you for a drink, Lin Sun said in his heart. At the same time, Travel Sword Gorge, Fu Nanli, Ren Futian, and the other old monsters scattered in the mortal world all heard Lin Sun's voice in their hearts. At first, they were shocked, then they could not help but cup their hands towards the sky, silently saying in their hearts, "Take care, my young friend." Above the sky, Lin Sun smiled and took a step forward. Immediately, a door appeared in front of him. When Lin Sun stepped in, his figure immediately disappeared. And in this void in the sky, there was Lin Sun's karmic Tao idol. One was dressed in a moon-white robe, with the shadows of the three great Tao ruins, Kunlun ruins and creation ruins surrounding his feet. And above his head, there was a lotus-shaped Tao diagram that represented nirvana, enshrouding it, and various supreme great Tao profundities appeared. Vaguely, there was also a blurry shadow, coexisting with the other three great Tao ruins, emitting the wonderful quintessence energy that belonged to the various Tao ruins. It was just that it was too blurry, so it seemed extremely illusory. And not far away from Lin Sun's karmic Tao idol were the karmic Tao idols of Qin Shi, the beginning, and the swordsman. They coexisted with each other, all supreme. Of course, all of these scenes were almost impossible to see in the boundless realm, unless there was a day in the future when someone could once again surpass the heavenly cycle Tao law in the struggle for the great Tao. Perhaps there would be a chance to see it. On that day, the mortal transformation world was in an uproar. In 10 months, Lin Sun had fought more than 800 battles, sweeping through the number 1 karmic Tao idols of the 5 competitions, and in the end, he surpassed the heavenly cycle Tao law. This was undoubtedly an unparalleled miracle, and what was especially popular was that according to legend, although the absolute beginning ruler had surpassed the heavenly cycle Tao law back then, it was only after being trapped for 100 years that he saw through the profundities of the mortal transformation world and opened the heavenly gates in one go. But now Lin Sun was completely unobstructed, and on the day he surpassed the heavenly cycle Tao law, he flew away. With such a comparison, people could vaguely judge in their hearts who was superior. However, everyone knew that such a comparison did not have much meaning. After all, Lin Sun was currently compared to the absolute beginning ruler of the past, and that was something that happened a long, long time ago. The current absolute beginning ruler was already a supreme existence in the ruins of Tao, and the forces under him were known as the strongest in the ruins of Tao. What happened in the mortal transformation world also reached the ears of the 9 masters of destiny of the 9 divisions of the absolute beginning path in the shortest time possible. After hearing the news, the hearts of the 9 masters of destiny of the 9 divisions of the absolute beginning path trembled, and stormy waves were set off. Surpassing the heavenly cycle Tao law of the mortal transformation world. Didn't this mean that Lin Sun's current foundation was not inferior to that of the sect master who left behind the karmic Tao idols in the mortal transformation world back then? There are 9 heavens in the realm of spirits, and Lin Sun has already crossed the first heaven. Everyone, you've all seen how terrifying this kid's cultivation is. We can't wait any longer. If we wait until he kills his way to the bound of universe, it will be too late. Qing Yangzi, the master of destiny of the Kuan division, had a grave expression. He had said such words not long after Lin Sun arrived in the mortal transformation world, but the other masters of destiny of the 8 divisions of destiny didn't care. But now, after learning of Lin Sun's feat of surpassing the heavenly cycle Tao law, and hearing Qin Yangzi's words, the other masters of destiny of the 8 divisions of destiny nodded subconsciously. They also felt the seriousness of the situation. There's no chance to act in the calamity world, the second heaven. If we want to deal with him, we must act in the dark world, the third heaven. Pei Tu, the master of destiny of the Qian division, spoke in a low voice. As he spoke, he looked at Ku He, the master of destiny of the Sun division. Ku He, there are numerous experts under your Sun division in the dark world. Moreover, the dark world is covered in layers of mist, and it cuts off all senses of the divine sense. So long as Lin Sun enters the dark world, he'll be no different from a blind man. At that time, the subordinates of your Sun division can make a move. Ku He nodded. We'll do our best. After a short pause, Ku He glanced at the other masters of destiny of the 9 divisions of destiny and said, the forces under your command are spread between the 4th heaven and the 8th heaven. If Lin Sun has the chance to enter the dark world alive, all of you must not hesitate. The eyes of some masters of destiny of the 9 divisions of destiny flickered, and they nodded. But there was also someone who frowned and said, when Miss told us about Lin Sun, she didn't ask us to stop or kill him. Are we overstepping our bounds by doing this? It was the master of destiny of the Zhen division, Dubhe, who spoke these words. At that time, Miss said that Lin Sun is a variable, and the sect master is extremely interested in him. She's already telling us what we should do. Qin Yangzi spoke coldly. Dubhe, don't forget who gave us the fortune at the beginning and brought us to the ruins of profound Tao to cultivate. Don't forget that if it wasn't for the sect master, then you, Dubhe, would have perished in the ocean of destiny over 10 eras ago. Dubhe's expression changed slightly, and he said, I naturally won't go against the sect master's decree. But the crux is that the sect master is trapped now, and the young miss is by the sect master's side as well. If we act arbitrarily without any orders, then what if? When he spoke up to hear, Dubhe suddenly noticed that the gazes of many carried coldness and displeasure, and he instantly laughed bitterly and said, Never mind, I agree to act with all of you. Pei Tu said in a light voice, We should naturally work together before a great enemy. Dubhe, we are all in the realm of spirits now, and it's impossible for us to go to the realm of spirits in person. In this way, even if something unexpected happens, it won't affect the 9 of us. Under such circumstances, why can't we test Lin Sun's ability with the strength of our 9 divisions? After a pause, he sneered and said, What's more, why does the sect master want to establish the 9 divisions? Isn't his purpose to make us serve and work for him? If you don't act, it's a great disrespect to the sect master. Let alone the sect master, the ape ancestor and the young miss will be the first to not spare you. Dubhe's expression changed again. He took a deep breath and said, I know what to do, and I won't drag you down. Pei Tu, Qin Yangzi, Ku He and the others looked at each other and nodded. None of them noticed that while they were discussing this matter, there was an old ape with 2 swords on his back outside the hall. He had been silent all the time. There will be more updates in the evening. Chapter 3255. Disaster Realm. It was a world where disasters occurred frequently and calamities abounded. The calamities were the calamities of the great Tao. Even the most common lightning tribulation possessed the destructive power that could threaten boundless realm existences. Apart from the lightning tribulation, there were also wind, fire, water, dust, and other boundless calamity auras. They were all incomparably dangerous. Since ancient times, almost all the mighty figures who entered this world would not attempt to travel and explore this world because there were too many calamities distributed in this world. Swoosh! On this day, Lin Sun's figure appeared out of thin air on a vast field in the disaster realm. He had just appeared when an earth-shattering crimson sandstorm swept over. The whimpering sounds were like the cries of gods, making one shudder. Lin Sun dodged at the first instance and shifted far away. But not long after he steadied himself, the nearby void suddenly collapsed. Violent black water gushed out like a flood. The aura that emanated revealed a terrifying corrosive power. Lin Sun had no choice but to shift again. He couldn't help but feel apprehensive. There were too many Tao tribulations in this disaster realm with his strength. He could naturally feel that whether it was the crimson sandstorm or the black flood that crushed the void, they were all filled with an aura that could threaten boundless realm existences. Normal characters wouldn't necessarily be able to block or neutralize it. It's already been 10 months. Xie Ji must be getting anxious from waiting. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun calmed his heart and sensed. Back then, when he separated from Xie Ji in the mortal transformation realm, he had given her a message talisman. This way, when he arrived at the disaster realm, he could sense her location immediately. A moment later, Lin Sun's eyes lit up and his figure shifted away. Xie Ji casually sat on a rock and closed her eyes. Her beautiful little face was filled with tranquility and holiness. In the distance there was a huge mountain. The mountain was undulating and barren. There was a gray mist covering the top and bottom of the mountain. One could vaguely see that there were already many figures standing on the mountain. Every figure stood on a different spot on the mountain, motionless. Every once in a while, a few figures could be seen walking up the mountain for a distance and then stopping. It seemed extremely strange. This mountain was the Rebirth Pass. To pass the barrier of life and death, one had to climb this mountain and cross it. It was just that it wasn't that easy to pass this trial, because the first step onto this mountain was like stepping onto the path of rebirth, and all thoughts and thoughts would fall into a strange state that was like the cycle of reincarnation. If one was able to struggle free from the cycle of reincarnation, then one would be able to struggle free from the path of rebirth and pass the test. If one was unable to struggle free, then one would be forever trapped on the path to rebirth, and one's cultivation would gradually disperse along with the passage of time until one perished. Because rebirth originally meant death. In the annals of the past, there were many examples of people being trapped on the path of life and perishing. At this moment, there were many figures standing before the pass of life. They didn't challenge the pass, and they were watching instead as if they were waiting for something. Like Xie Ji, some were scattered in different areas to meditate and cultivate. Mississippi, suddenly, a man walked over towards Xie Ji from afar. He wore a violet gold robe, was handsome, and emitted an extremely shocking aura. "What's up?" Summer Solstice opened her eyes. Her voice was clear and pleasant like the sounds of nature, but it was cold. "How beautiful!" The man's eyes lit up while his Tao heart burned for no rhyme or reason. He took a deep breath and cupped his hands as he said, "I'm Du Kanjiao. To tell you the truth, I'd noticed that Miss was walking alone on the first day you arrived here. Now that it's been 10 months, Miss still hasn't challenged the pass. Could it be that you have doubts?" "I'm just waiting for someone." Xie Ji's expression was tranquil. Even though she was looking at this man who called himself Du Kanjiao, there wasn't a trace of emotion in her eyes. If it was any other person that heard this answer, that person would have probably moved away a long time ago. However, Du Kanjiao was slightly disgruntled and said, "Oh? May I know who you're waiting for?" "What does it have to do with you?" Xie Ji frowned. These words were extremely blunt, and it revealed undisguised rejection and conflict. An embarrassed expression flashed on Du Sanjiao's face, and he cupped his hands and said, "Sorry for disturbing you." After that, he turned around and left. Xie Zhi closed her eyes once more. In the past 10 months, countless people had come to strike up a conversation with her, and it made her a little annoyed. She really couldn't understand why those cultivators would be so bored as to strike up a conversation with her when they didn't know each other. Didn't they think that it was very annoying? Xie Zhi didn't realize that this was all because of her beauty. Not only so, as a great boundless realm cultivator who could enter the heaven gate from the mortal transcendent realm and reach the rebirth pass, her unique disposition and aura of Tao held an irresistible allure to others. But fortunately, even if those men were disgruntled, they were very tactful. After all, they were all existences that had lived for countless years. None of them would act like hotheads and use some forceful method. At this moment, when they saw the purple-gold-robed man return in defeat, many of the major powers that were watching this scene couldn't help but laugh. "This should be the 39th, right?" someone teased. "I wonder what kind of person in this world would be able to catch the eye of such a beauty." Someone sighed. "Didn't you hear what that lady said? She's waiting for someone." Someone said softly. "Then I'd like to see who that person is. How could he bear to let such a beauty wait so bitterly here? This is intolerable." Someone said angrily. Many people's eyes flickered. They were also curious as to who that beautiful lady who could cause ripples in the hearts of these major powers was waiting for. It's definitely not someone powerful, and his cultivation is definitely not as strong as that lady. Otherwise, why would that lady be the first to arrive, and that person still hasn't left the mortal transformation realm? In my opinion, the person that lady is waiting for is probably even weaker than us. Many voices of discussion sounded. But at this moment, Xie Zhi suddenly opened her eyes and said with a cold voice, "In my eyes, he's 1,000 times stronger than all of you." There was a moment of silence. Then, many people chuckled and shook their heads. "Lady, if that person of yours is so powerful, why hasn't he arrived yet?" The purple-gold-robed man, Du Canjiao, who had failed to strike up a conversation with her, couldn't help but ask, "If he's trapped in the mortal transformation realm, are you going to wait for him forever?" "He will come." Summer Solstice's voice was quiet and casual, as if she was talking about a matter of course. For no rhyme or reason, a strand of unwillingness surged into Du Sanjiao's heart, or perhaps it could be said that it was a rare feeling of jealousy. He said, "But what if he doesn't come?" "I'll wait," Summer Solstice said without hesitation. Du Sanjiao's expression changed indeterminately, and he let out a long sigh. "I really don't know who that lucky fellow is. If I see him, I'll definitely have a fight with him." Before he could finish speaking, a chuckle sounded from afar. "You want to compete with me?" His voice wasn't loud, but it clearly resounded throughout the world. Du Canjiao and the other great powers nearby were startled. To their astonishment, just as the voice rang out, 10 months had passed. The fairy-like woman who had been sitting cross-legged on the rock was the first to stand up. Her tranquil and beautiful face revealed a heartfelt smile. That smile was so beautiful that it could intoxicate one's heart. It had been 10 months, but none of the great powers present had seen that woman smile even once. Everyone could not help but feel a little jealous. Then, they saw a man dressed in moon-white robes approaching from afar. He was handsome and indifferent, and had an otherworldly air about him. It was naturally Lin Sun. "I've kept you waiting." Lin Sun smiled and reached out to rub Summer Solstice's head. His voice was slightly apologetic. "It's only been 10 months. It's nothing." Summer Solstice's entire face was radiant, and there was an unconcealable smile on her fair, picturesque face. The scene caused the hearts of those watching from afar to churn again. "Lin Sun, he said he wanted to compete with you." Summer Solstice suddenly turned around and pointed at Du Canjiao, the purple-gold-robed man in the distance. Du Canjiao was stunned. Soon after, He revealed a confident and arrogant smile and said, "That's indeed what I said. The reason is very simple. It's because it's not worth it for this young lady. If it was me, I would definitely not allow this young lady to bitterly wait here alone for 10 months." His words were full of regret. Lin Sun was stunned for a moment. Looking at summer solstice beside him, he felt more and more ashamed. He cupped one hand in the other before his chest and said to Du Canjiao in the distance, "You're right." Du Canjiao was also stunned for a moment, and then he snorted coldly, "Although you seem to have apologized, it's your fault after all. How about this, let's have a competition. I'll help this lady to vent her anger. What do you think?" He actually wanted to see what ability Lin Sun had to capture summer solstice's heart. This was probably a subtle feeling of unwillingness at work. Summer solstice frowned and was about to say something, but Lin Sun stopped her with a smile. "There's no hatred between us. It's not good to fight and kill each other." "Brother," before she finished, Du Canjiao interrupted her, "there's no need to say more. Do you dare?" This, Lin Sun sighed softly and said, "As you wish." "Good. You're still a man." Du Canjiao laughed loudly. "Come on, let me test your ability. I won't bully you. You're the latecomer, so you should be the one to fight. Remember, use all your strength, or you won't even know how you lose." "That's not good, is it?" Lin Sun hesitated. "Cut the crap. Just do as I say." Du Canjiao looked more and more disdainful and calm. "Fellow Taoist, you must be careful." Lin Sun nodded, stretched out his right hand, and pressed in the void at will. Boom! Du Canjiao, who was originally confident and disdainful, felt as if his state of mind was under the heavy pressure of an ancient holy mountain. His qi almost collapsed in an instant. His face changed abruptly, and he ran his cultivation to the extreme. But the force of Lin Sun's press directly affected his state of mind. How could he resist it? Bang! In an instant, Du Canjiao's body softened, and he fell directly to the ground, shouting anxiously, "I admit defeat." The whole audience was stunned, and the atmosphere was dead silent. How could he lose so quickly? Recalling that Du Canjiao had threatened to let Lin Sun attack first and warned Lin Sun to use all his strength, otherwise he would lose without even knowing how he lost, the powerful figures present felt inexplicably strange. Things seemed to be reversed. At this time, Lin Sun had already retracted his palm force and apologized, "Brother, it's my fault for not controlling my strength well and startling you." Not controlling his strength well, the corners of the mouths of the powerful figures present twitched, and they were all in a mess. Chapter 32:56. To be able to enter the heavenly gate and enter the calamity world through the heavenly Tao law of the mortal transformation, he was naturally much more powerful than an ordinary cultivator of the boundless realm. As far as people knew, Du Canjiao's cultivation was already at the top of this realm, and he was not far from the boundless Taoist master. But Du Canjiao was defeated by a single palm strike. This was naturally shocking. When they looked at Lin Sun again, the attitudes of the powerful figures present had quietly changed. "Brother, I'm sorry for offending you." Lin Sun stepped forward and helped Du Canjiao up. Du Canjiao's expression was uncertain. After a long time, he smiled bitterly and cupped his hands. "I was overestimating myself." After a pause, he glanced at Xia Ji and said, "Don't let this lady wait for too long in the future." Lin Sun nodded with a smile. "Xia Ji, let's go," Lin Sun said softly. Xia Ji hummed and walked side by side with Lin Sun towards the rebirth pass in the distance. The powerful figures in the vicinity were surprised. Were the two planning to break through the pass directly? They all turned to look at the source of the voice. The majestic mountain was shrouded in mist. Many cultivators were trapped on the mountain path, motionless like clay statues. This was the rebirth pass. Setting foot on this mountain was equivalent to setting foot on a path to rebirth. Both body and mind would fall into a reincarnation-like state. Since ancient times, countless cultivators had been trapped here. Even more so, countless cultivators had perished on the path to rebirth. As Lin Sun and Xia Ji stepped onto the mountain, they both paused as they felt an obscure and mysterious power shrouding them. Lin Sun was extremely familiar with this aura. It was exactly the same as the aura of the samsara world in the nirvana ultimacy. At the same time, Xia Ji also felt it. She was the eternal Night Emperor in her previous life. In other words, she was like a reincarnated body at this moment. When she felt this aura, she actually felt that it was not unfamiliar to her. This was the aura of reincarnation. Lin Sun and Xia Ji looked at each other. Then, without delay, they walked up the mountain path. Along the way, the aura of reincarnation filled the mist and constantly impacted their minds. Moreover, as their figures grew higher and higher, the aura of samsara grew stronger, and it was simply like a surging torrent that poured down from the peak of a mountain. If it were other boundless realm existences, they would probably not be able to withstand it long ago. But it couldn't stop Lin and Xia Ji. When they were halfway up the mountain, the aura of reincarnation was like a raging storm. Lin Sun waved his sleeves, and the light all over the sky turned into a big abyss. In the rumbling sound, it directly swallowed up the samsara storm, leaving nothing behind. Xia Ji was stunned and said, "You want to use this to comprehend the profundities of samsara?" Lin Sun shook his head and said, "The power contained in the paths of rebirth is merely the tip of the samsara law. It is far less marvelous than the samsara world in the nirvana ultimacy. It is useless to study it." As they chatted, the two of them continued on their way. Soon, they reached the peak of the mountain, whereupon they vanished. Not far from the rebirth pass, Du Canzhou and the other great powers were stunned. Was he going to walk away just like that? How was this a challenge? It was clearly a leisurely stroll, as easy as climbing a mountain. That's the pass of rebirth. Why can't it stop them at all? An old monster muttered in a daze. The dangers and difficulties of the pass of rebirth were something that everyone present knew very well. But who would have thought that there would be someone in this world who could surpass it so easily? As expected of the successor of Feng Siyuan, whose name has shaken the mortal transformation realm in the past 100 years. There were also people who sighed with emotion. What? He's Lin Sun? Du Canzhou was stunned. Only now did he realize who had defeated him with a single palm. He couldn't keep his cool anymore. It was certain that Lin Sun had only arrived in the mortal transformation realm in recent years. But now, he already possessed such a level of cultivation. How could those old monsters remain calm? After crossing the pass of rebirth, Lin Sun and Xia Ji appeared in a dusky world. Chaotic aura pervaded the place, and it exuded an ancient and primitive aura. One could vaguely see rays of brilliant light enshrouding the chaotic aura, giving off a different luster. Upon closer inspection, they were the silhouettes of almighty beings. These great powers were scattered in different areas of the world, and each of them exuded an extremely powerful aura of the great Tao. And in front of them floated a great Tao world. The dazzling and multicolored glow of the Tao effused out from the grand Tao worlds in front of these great figures, and it caused this gray and hazy world to be filled with numerous gorgeous colors. This was the Tao building pass. Anyone who reached this place would need to use their own cultivation to draw upon the chaotic source energy that was distributed throughout the world to build a great Tao world. When the aura of the great Tao world resonated with the chaotic source energy of the world, it would be converted into a brand that fused with the world, and one would be able to leave this place. Back in the mortal transformation realm, Lin Sun and Xia Ji had learned about this, so they weren't surprised. To put it simply, the so-called Tao building pass was to create a world that was filled with the rules of the heavenly Tao. What really piqued Lin Sun's curiosity was that it was said that the great Tao world, created by the cultivators who could pass the Tao building pass, would transform into a real cultivation world, born from the source energy of the ruins of creation, and then appear in an era of civilization. If this was true, it would be too shocking. In the ruins of profundity of Tao, a world of the grand Tao built by a boundless realm existence was able to be born in the quintessence of the ruins of creation, and it transformed into a world that truly existed in the civilization of an epoch. How unbelievable were the profundities involved in this! Lin soon couldn't help but wonder if the starry sky ancient path, boundless world, eternal world, and other cultivation worlds that he cultivated in the past were created by some great powers in the Tao-building paths at the very beginning? No, if that's the case, then the great Tao world created by those great powers is just a seed. The real key lies in the nurturing of the source energy of creation. Otherwise, it's impossible for this seed to germinate and break out of the ground, Lin soon pondered. He himself had mastered the law of creation, so he naturally knew the essence and mystery of the source energy of creation. It could be said that the ruins of creation was the mother nest of each era's civilization, and it had the power to nurture creation. It was impossible for the great Tao world, created by these great powers, to directly transform into a cultivation world in an era's civilization. What really surprised Lin Sun was that the ruins of wonderful Tao and the ruins of creation were also related. This happened to confirm his speculation many years ago. The four great ruins of Tao did not exist in isolation, but there was some kind of connection between them. In the ruins of creation there was the river of Era. In the ultimate there were the 5 mountains of the ultimate. In the Kunlun ruins there was the sea of fate. And in the ruins of wonderful Tao, there was the source energy of chaos. There must be a connection between the source energy of the 4 great ruins of Tao. For example, the power of those cultivators who died in the Kunlun ruins would appear in the source energy of the ultimate. For example, from the Kunlun ruins Sea of Fate, one could compete to cross the ruins of wonderful Tao. For example, the Era civilizations born in the ruins of creation were related to the various Era worlds in the Sea of Fate. At this moment, the Tao-building barrier had formed a connection with the ruins of creation, and it was like the relationship between a seed and the soil. All of this undoubtedly confirmed Lin Sun's judgment from all those years ago. Right when Lin Sun was pondering, a strange fluctuation of energy suddenly arose in this chaotic world, and it was as if a world had been split open. Extremely far away, an old man with snow-white hair and a beard stroked his beard and smiled. After spending 33,600 years of effort, I've finally established a great Tao world. His voice was filled with happiness and joy. Before him, a great Tao world had transformed into a dazzling ray of light that shot into the sky and vanished into the deepest depths of the chaos. Congratulations, fellow Taoist! A wave of congratulatory voices rose and fell. The old man cupped his fists and thanked everyone, and then his figure swiftly vanished into thin air. Obviously, he'd passed through the Tao-building barrier. This scene also attracted the envy of many powerful figures in other nearby areas. But soon, they all concentrated on the great Tao world in front of them. Seeing this scene, Xia Ji couldn't help but whisper, "It took more than 33,000 years to pass this barrier. Is it really so difficult?" Before Lin Sun could speak, an old voice sounded not far away. "Girl, whether it's difficult or not varies from person to person. There were people with remarkable abilities who were able to successfully establish their Tao in less than 100 years and break through seclusion. Some have been here for hundreds of thousands of years, but they haven't succeeded so far. The previous fellow Taoist only spent more than 30,000 years, which is fast among all the practitioners who have passed through the Tao-building barrier since ancient times." It was a black-robed young man who spoke, but his tone was extremely vicissitude. Beside the black-robed young man, there were several powerful figures. Different from others who were concentrating on Tao-building, they were drinking and chatting before, and they also noticed Lin Sun and Xia Ji, who had just arrived here. "Why don't you hurry up to Tao-building?" Lin Sun asked. The black-robed young man smiled. "It's not that easy to Tao-building. What's more, what's the use of hurry up? In the final analysis, Dao building also depends on one's own strength, so there's no hurry. Most people are eager to pass the barrier with all their strength, step by step through the 9-heaven gate, and reach the mysterious God realm. But for us, we are more willing to experience the experience along the way. Speaking of this, the black-robed young man asked Lin Sun, "What about you?" "Me?" Lin Sun was stunned for a moment, and then said with a smile, "I'm different from you. It's difficult for me to stop and take a rest." The black-robed youth seemed to understand very well. He nodded and said, "The boundless realm is known as great freedom, great unfettered. But when one truly attains this realm, one will realize that there are still many things in this world that are beyond one's control. There's the burden of gratitude and grudges, there's the fetters of karma, and there's also responsibility and bearing. If you want to stop and take a rest, it won't be so easy." "That's very kind of you," Lin Sun said with a smile. Chapter 32:57. Fellow Taoists, it's your first time here. Why don't you join us for a chat? Beside the black-robed youth, an old woman in a purple robe invited them with a smile. "As you wish." Lin Sun agreed with a smile. He and Xie Ji went straight forward, sat on the ground, and started chatting with these powerful figures. Soon, they all knew each other's names and origins. When he learned that Lin Sun was the successor of the Master of Square Inch, the black-robed youth seemed to have a sudden realization and said, "So you are that Lotus." Obviously, they had all heard about Lin Sun's deeds. Next, Lin Sun took out some wine and chatted with these powerful figures about the ruins of wonders. Soon, they talked about their understanding of the great Tao. Lin Sun was also touched and inspired when he talked with them. For the black-robed youth and the others, some of the understanding and knowledge of the great Tao that Lin Sun spoke of also surprised and admired them. After a long time, Lin Sun said with a smile, "I am very happy to be able to meet all of you today and drink and chat with you. If we meet again in the future, I will definitely drink and chat with all of you." The black-robed youth said in surprise, "Fellow Taoist Lin, do you already have the confidence to pass this test?" Lin Sun thought for a moment and said, "This test shouldn't be a problem for me and Xie Ji. Then we will see the two of you," the purple-robed old woman said with a smile. The others also showed looks of anticipation. Lin Sun and Xie Ji stood up and came to an empty area. "Xie Ji, you go first," Lin Sun said softly. Xie Ji nodded, and there was an invisible aura surging around her graceful figure. After a while, she stretched out her hand and drew in the void. Buzz. In the nearby world, the power of the origin of chaos was drawn over like torrents and gathered under Xie Ji's slender white fingers. Then, the embryonic form of a great Tao world gradually condensed and formed. The sun and moon reflected, the mountains and rivers surged, and the landscape evolved later. All the phenomena of the heavens appeared, and the power of change in the world was born. The entire process only lasted for less than an hour, and an unfathomable world of the Grand Tao had reached a perfect state before summer solstice. Within the world of the Great Tao, the power of the rules permeated the air. Various great Taos fused into every blade of grass and every tree. There was even the aura of destiny circulating endlessly within it. Buzz, it was also at this moment that a strange resonance occurred in this chaotic world. In the nearby area, all the mighty figures who were concentrating on building their Tao were alarmed and looked over. Shua. The grand Tao world in front of summer solstice suddenly transformed into a ray of light that charged into the sky. "Come quickly." Xie Ji only had time to say this before her figure disappeared into thin air. I remember that woman only arrived today, right? Some of the Almighties were stunned. That's right. She arrived 6 hours ago. Before that, she had been chatting with those fellow Taoists. It's just that, she actually established a world of the great Tao and left in just an hour. That's too fast, someone gasped. Among them, there were those who had been trapped here for tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, and even hundreds of thousands of years. In contrast, summer solstice's action of only taking an hour to break through the world of the great Tao was undoubtedly too shocking. It gave everyone a sense of unreality. The black-robed youth, the purple-robed old woman, and the others who had witnessed the entire process were also stunned. Their hearts were greatly impacted. After a long while, the black-robed youth couldn't help but laugh. I didn't expect that this time we would witness the birth of a great miracle. The others were also filled with emotion. When they were chatting before, summer solstice was quiet and rarely spoke. Almost everyone's attention fell on Lin Sun. No one had expected that such a beautiful girl would have such a high attainment in the great Tao. Everyone, Lin Sun will also leave first. Farewell. At this time, Lin Sun smiled and cupped his hands in greeting. Ha ha ha, well, let's see how fellow Taoist Lin will break through. Someone said with a smile. At this moment, the movement here had attracted the attention of many other powerful figures in this world. When they heard this, they couldn't help but look at Lin Sun. Summer solstice's previous action had shocked them. They also wanted to see what Lin Sun would do. Under the gaze of many people, Lin Sun pondered for a while and suddenly raised his hand and pointed at the void at will. Boom! The world trembled, and the power of the origin of chaos, which was like a landslide and a tsunami, swarmed toward the place where Lin Sun pointed at like crazy. The commotion was so great that it made everyone present jump in fright. They had been here for many years, but they had never seen such a big movement at the beginning of the Great Tao building. What kind of Great Tao world would he build with such a big movement? Everyone couldn't help but be curious. But before they could see it clearly, they saw a flash of divine rainbow, and Lin Sun had disappeared out of thin air. The power of the origin of chaos, which had gathered at his fingertips, disappeared without a trace. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? He stretched out his finger and the chaos emerged. How could he break through without waiting for the great Tao building? The black-robed young man and the purple-robed old woman couldn't sit still. They all stood up and looked at each other. Such an abnormal scene caused them to be unable to remain calm. After a long time, when the world was calm again, the purple-robed old woman muttered. He said goodbye without any ambiguity. Our fellow Taoist Lin is really elusive. What do you mean by appearing and disappearing like a ghost? I think the Tao building stage is just a figurehead to him. Someone smiled bitterly. Have you ever heard of such a thing happening before? Someone couldn't help asking. No. Everyone shook their heads. For a time, people's mood became more and more complicated. Undoubtedly, this was more amazing than the feat of summer solstice, which subverted people's cognition and imagination. Not only these powerful figures, but also Lin Sun himself was very surprised. He originally planned to build his great Tao, and he was already confident in his heart. But when he drew the power of the origin of chaos, the world seemed to be unable to bear his cultivation, so he was teleported away without giving him a chance to build his great Tao. This is probably related to the rule of creation that I have mastered. Once I build my great Tao here, it is very likely to let the great Tao world take root and sprout, turning into a real world of cultivation. Lin Sun was thoughtful. Then, Lin Sun saw that he appeared in front of a big river. The big river seemed to come from the sky, surging in the endless world of nothingness. And in different places on one side of the big river, many figures stood scattered. Summer solstice. Shadow was also among them. Lin Sun immediately walked over. So fast? Summer solstice couldn't help but be surprised. She had just arrived, and Lin Sun appeared immediately after. Lin Sun said with a smile, I was worried that you would wait too long. As he spoke, his gaze was already looking at the vast and mighty river. This was the third stage of the Calamity Realm, the heart-knocking stage. It was said that the water flowing in this big river had a mysterious power. When flying over it, endless waves would appear, slapping the mind of the cultivator. If the mind was not stable, they would encounter unexpected disasters. If it was light, they would be injured and return empty-handed. If it was serious, their mind would collapse and they would die. Among the 3 stages of the Calamity Realm, the heart-knocking stage was undoubtedly the most dangerous. And if one wanted to pass, they had to cross this big river. At this time, although there were many figures standing in the area by the big river, no one tried to pass the stage. Some people failed to pass the stage and were trapped here. Some people believed that their mind was not enough and did not dare to try rashly. When Lin Sun and Summer Solstice arrived one after another, they also attracted the attention of these powerful figures. Many people looked at the 2 of them. However, most of them were just curious, and there was no hostility. After all, countless years had passed, but those who could really reach the heart-knocking stage only appeared once in a long time. But today, a man and a woman arrived one after another, which was naturally very surprising. Lin Sun ignored these and said to Summer Solstice, "You go first. Remember, you must do your best. Only in this way can you get a more magical Tao fruit of chaos." After passing the heart-knocking stage, one would be able to attract a Tao fruit of chaos and enter the 3rd heaven realm through the heavenly gate of the Calamity Realm. And the less time it took to cross the river, the more magical the Tao fruit of chaos would be. Summer Solstice nodded and went straight forward. Her graceful figure stepped in the air like a beautiful fairy. "You've just arrived and you want to pass the stage?" Many people were surprised and attracted by Summer Solstice's actions. They didn't know whether to say that she was bold or fearless. Crash in the big river, waves like snow rose into the air and slapped fiercely at Summer Solstice. However, they did not touch her figure, but directly bombarded her mind. Summer Solstice's figure only paused for a moment, and then, as if she had adapted to this bombardment, her straight and slender legs took a step forward. In just a few breaths, she faced the rolling waves and arrived on the other side of the vast and mighty river. There was a sudden uproar in the field, and exclamations sounded everywhere. Those old monsters who had been trapped in this stage for countless years couldn't help but tremble and be stunned. She took a step into the air and floated across the river. That kind of demeanor made those powerful figures feel ashamed of their inferiority. Lin Sun secretly sighed with emotion. Summer Solstice's mind was like a clear mirror. It was because of its purity that it appeared so powerful. Although this heart-knocking stage was dangerous, it was not difficult for Summer Solstice at all. At this time, on the other side of the river, as soon as Summer Solstice's figure stood firm, a mysterious and unpredictable rain of chaotic light emerged and bathed her figure in it. That was the power of the Tao fruit of chaos. And above Summer Solstice's head, a heavenly gate appeared, as if it was boundless and high. This scene caused the other Almighties to feel envious and even a little dejected. They had been here for many years, and what they dreamed of was to cross the river and enter the heavenly gate, but they had not been able to do it so far. But Summer Solstice had just arrived, and she easily achieved all this. How could it not make people feel complicated?